Welcome to Franchise Killer, a podcast where we talk about movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong.
Alright. I command the episode continue. It will continue. Go on, the spice. Give it to me.
So, having seen both Dune movies now, which voice is better? Do you like the one from the original or the one from the new one?
They're both good, surprisingly.
I would...
No.
Okay.
I think the one in the original is actually surprisally good.
It's not...
No, the new one is
It's
way
not-
better, for sure.
It's not
But I was
great.
surprised
The new one's
by
better.
the original.
All right. I thought it was effective. I was surprised for an 80s movie that it wasn't, like, making me cringe.
Can you imagine, though, if it was more like,
Open the door. Let her go.
It needs to be an overlay, like just an added layer or harmonic, not just like a whole new like growl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
they make
I
a great
agree.
metal singer, though.
Turns out that they just get some Chad to be like, bro, could you grab that spoon, please?
That was the voice.
Bro.
There's no other movie other than this one that has people making a sound and then another voice like overlaying on it. Like you have the bald dudes from the beginning who they're just like, and then like the voice is like, you know, projecting through that some modulator or
Translator,
something.
yeah.
Like there's so much of that in Dune.
Yep.
You know, Paul is just sitting with his mom. It's like, yes, mother, we should work on my voice. Yes, command me, son. Bro, like, pass me over, like, that thought real quick. Very good, son. Very good, Paul.
I love to think that they don't actually have to do this weird voice. They could just speak normally, but she decided, I'm going to do this
It's, like,
voice.
cool, though, right? It's like, see, that's why they do it.
I'm Reese. Across from me we have,
David.
to his left,
Irina.
to my right.
Vladimir Harkonnen.
A+ compared to some of the other ones you've done. I like that one.
Also known as...
Noah.
And enduring the excruciating pain of the gom jabber, we have...
AJ. Also
Did you say that
enduring the
right?
pain of terrible pronunciations all about.
It's Gom Jabbar.
We practiced this on purpose.
I hope
No,
you know
he
I
was
did
trying
that.
to bait him.
and I'm trying to lean into it. Come on.
Gam Jabber.
Yeah, I'll
the
be...
Gam Jabber.
I'll be doing a lot of trolling in terms of pronunciation on this, probably. But we'll see.
Much of AJ's chagrin.
The movie we're talking about, of course, is Dune. And no, we do not want to raise our viewership, so we are talking about the 1984 Dune. But, caveat, I actually think that is a more exciting conversation because this is a complete story, and we get to discuss it from beginning to end and see how this lines up with the book, which we do have one or maybe two people that have actually read the book. So we get to actually talk about how this movie, you know,
Compares?
or how this movie is it a successful, complete adaptation of this story? And the funny thing is, way back in the 70s, when they were first pitching this movie, it was envisioned many times as a two-parter. It would pass from director to director. You'd have Ridley Scott, who envisioned it as a two-parter. Mm-hmm. You'd have our director here, David Lynch, envisioning it as a two-parter. And it just ended up being condensed into this, what we have now.
Thanks,
it's one
studios,
film. Yeah.
for all that you do.
Should have gone a new line.
But yeah, the movie is directed by, as I already mentioned, David Lynch. A director you would never associate with a big budget movie. Because listen to this filmography here.
Screenplay 2.
Yes, screenplay too as well. I think he's written every single one of his movies. He's as much a director as he is a writer. He had directed Eraserhead, The Elephant Man. The Elephant Man was actually the movie that kind of got him the gig. I think the people who were searching for directors for this saw Elephant Man and they were like, yeah, he's the one to do this.
He might just pull it off.
Yeah. Blue Velvet. I would say if you his two more like this is his most commercial movie, even though it's like super weird.
Yeah.
But if you his more accessible things
Eraserhead.
are no, definitely not Eraserhead. That is a movie I like to show people who have no like. That's something
iconic.
Eraserhead is the movie where you have some high school art friends and one of them's like, hey, I have a movie I need to show you guys. And you go to their house and they take you to their room and all the lights are off, and they're like, "You guys just got to be quiet and watch this real quick."
Okay, it's funny you say that, and I think we've talked about it, Irina. I have a friend who is a very artsy hipster dude. Love you, Sam. But his favorite director, he told me, was David Lynch.
Yeah.
And he was quoting some of these as just iconic movies that are better than most directors, and I think a lot of people will agree.
Yeah, it's definitely one that if you are a cinephile, if you like avidly seek out movies to watch, you're gonna know Eraserhead. I think general public, they might know the name, but probably haven't seen it.
If you want an acid trip of a movie, go watch Eraserhead right now. If
Yeah,
you just want to be confused, that's it.
It's something to show people who have, like... It's the ultimate troll, in my opinion.
You trolled me with it, Reese. I remember.
But what's weird about Eraserhead is I actually think it's an amazing film. Like, I love it.
Yeah.
But if you direct it at a certain person who does not know what they're getting into, it's hilarious to watch them experience.
Look,
So, sorry. Go ahead.
I know, I was just going to make a joke. I remember watching it, and then it's just like, hey, Mom. It's like, what is happening?
Like that the dinner scene in that movie. Oh my
Anyway.
gosh.
I know you said
Sorry,
that
we'll move on.
this is his most commercial, but I would say like maybe the other option is it was actually a television show, but Twin Peaks.
Yep.
I think that one has had the most like cultural traction.
All this to
Yes.
say is David Lynch is somewhat not mainstream.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, his most accessible stuff is Blue Velvet, Twin Peaks, obviously the TV show, and Mulholland Drive, I think, is like slightly more accessible
Yeah.
than some of his other stuff.
And
He's
yet
more
you
of an
know his
auteur.
name still.
Yeah. But he's also directed Wild at Heart, Twin Peaks, Fire Walk with Me, Lost Highway, The Straight Story, as I said, Mulholland Drive, and his latest movie, which he's really slowed down, and he doesn't direct a lot anymore, but was Inland Empire. And he did have a revisiting to the Twin Peaks series. He did another standalone miniseries catching up with that show. So definitely an interesting director choice for Dune. The would-be grown-up Star Wars, as some people wanted to coin it as. The movie stars Kyle MacLachlan, Virginia Madsen, Francesca Annis, Leonardo Simino. This is a long cast, by the way. Brad Dourif, Jose Ferrer, and I'll probably mess up some of these, but Linda Hunt, Freddie Jones, Richard Jordan, Silvana Mangano, Everett McGill, Kenneth McMillian, Jack Nance, Sean Phillips, Jurgen Prochnow, Paul L. Smith, Patrick Stewart, and Sting. The movie's written, as we already mentioned, by David Lynch, and it's based on Dune, by Frank Herbert. So, for those that are new to this show, on this podcast, we first go over our thoughts on the film before revisiting it for the episode. Then we dive into the story, break it down bit by bit, and talk about the more significant moments. Then, towards the end of the show, we give our brief reviews and numbered scores, along with an analysis on the health of the franchise and whether or not this film hurt it. So, with this being our new miniseries, the Metamorphosis miniseries, chosen by our own AJ, what do you, sir, think of Dune? Or what? No, what is your? What is your?
We're gonna have it out right now.
We're just gonna do our review.
My background.
What is your background with this iteration of Dune?
I remember my uncle bringing it home and I guess putting it on the computer. It might have been floppy disk that time, not CD. I wasn't really allowed to watch because it's too gory, but I just kind of got the gist of blasting away aliens, and then you obviously have the adaptation now with the Rock. So,
Oh yeah, the latest adaptation of that with the Rock, Dwayne the Rock Johnson.
yeah. But I didn't really know. I mean, I guess there's sequels of the game.
I'm racking my brain over an adaptation that The Rock has been in that is anywhere close to something like Dune.
You don't know?
Do you know? What is it?
Yeah. Wait,
I
I know
know.
you're pronouncing it weird, but Doom?
Doom. Oh.
It's either
The
that
game-
or Scorpion King, because that is in a desert.
game
The
with a
thing is, I
rockin'
didn't think of Doom as
soundtrack.
an adaptation just because, like, video games, for some reason, I don't know why I'm not. Oh, yeah, but yes, you can have an adaptation of a video game that just I don't know why that didn't cross my mind. Okay, well, AJ, for his own miniseries that he selected, he decided instead of Dune, he would watch Doom. So
Find out next week.
It's probably a more enjoyable experience
Anyway,
than having him watch
so-
the...
I do love the idea of him deciding, like, we're going to watch Dune, and then instead watching Doom. Just
Yeah, it's all in how you say the word. Apparently, people say it differently enough. No, so I had read Dune, actually the first 3 books. Frank Herbert wrote 6 books, and then his son and collaborators
Herbert.
wrote some expanded books. But I've only read the first 3, but I've read Dune, the first one, several times. In fact, I probably went through another read a couple months ago, and then actually just this week did a cram session just for this episode. So I was really excited about the new one coming out, because obviously, if you've listened to our other episodes, we're big fans of our boy Denis Villeneuve.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, this kind of lines up a little bit with that there, as well as I've seen the 2000 sci-fi miniseries as well, which is actually really good in my opinion.
There was a miniseries of this?
yeah, there was.
Yeah,
I didn't even know
Sci-Fi
that.
Channel when it was actually SCI instead of SY.
Huh.
Yeah, so they made a 3-part miniseries of this, and then they also did another one that incorporated the next 2 books, which actually has what's his name? Plays not Patrick Stewart. Here, there's a connection there. The next Xavier.
The
James McAvoy?
James
Yeah,
McAvoy,
that's
yeah.
right. Yeah.
So,
That's cool.
Yeah, so also another adaptation that I think I recommend everybody check out, even though oddly they're not streaming really on anything.
I'll try and
So-
find it somewhere, because I just love Dune.
I have heard from a few people that they really did prefer that version. They
Yeah,
say
I
it's
do
the
too.
better one.
Yeah, I
Alright.
have quite a bit of background with this story in general, and then in particular this movie I had seen a few times, couple attempts to get into it, and just because of the name. So
All right, Noah, how about you?
I had seen this long ago, since I was a child.
I feel like you guys
In a
can all
galaxy
talk
far,
about
far
your
away?
experience, honestly.
Yeah, pretty much. Our mom was a big fan of Dune and played it for us, and therefore we're relatively good fans of it.
Well,
Relative.
both
I
are...
weirdly feel like it was a sick time movie. Like I'd watch it a
Oh,
lot.
yeah, it kinda was.
When I'm feeling sick, I can't go to school. Like Dune
Yeah.
was something
She
would put on.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, that's how
Which
most
is
of
very
these movies
bizarre
are.
because it's quite intense.
Yeah.
I can imagine she's like, you feel sick? Look at the Harkonnen.
Well, if you recall, she's also the one that's shown Exorcist to us when we were
Yeah.
So I know
about 5 to 7 years old.
I know that mom would put on this movie several times, kind of like when the mood hit, And but I'm pretty sure both our parents have read the book too.
Really?
So yeah, I know my dad has for sure. I think mom did, but it's so while we haven't read the book, all of us have kind of you've read the book now.
I read the book, yeah.
But Reese and I have started it, and I don't know if you feel the same way, but it's mostly because I've seen this movie so much that the beginning starts kind of pretty accurately to a scene that is in the movie. So I have trouble getting hooked in because
and it's
I'm
a lot
like,
of-
oh, I've seen all this.
And it's a lot of table setting,
Yeah.
too, where it's like at the beginning they're just laying everything out, and it
Yeah.
takes a while to kind of really, hit the ground and
Yeah.
go for it.
Because I seem to remember some of the first stuff you read is kind of bleeding into Paul in bed, pretending to be asleep and hearing Jessica and
The Benny Jesuit.
The Reverend
not
Mother.
Jesuit David.
Just,
No, I'm not going to lie. I cannot get... For some reason, I
Jesuit.
say Benny Jesuit every time. I'm trying really
It's the
hard.
Benny Jesuit.
So if he says that and we don't catch him, just roll with it.
Make fun of me.
But yeah, so I seem to remember that's the first scene, and from the little bit I've read, they seemed to kind of like go through that scene almost word for word. So
Okay, with us out of the way, David, you're the last man standing here. How about you?
Yeah, with this movie specifically, I had no connection to, hadn't seen it. Although, actually, there was one time, like I want to say maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I was at your house, and it was on in the background, and I saw like, I don't know, maybe a minute or two of one scene. I don't even remember what it was. And I just remember going, yep, not for me, and I left. And granted, it was in the middle of the movie, and I was doing other stuff, so... I mean, who knows how I feel now, but
Yeah.
I just remember that.
This is one of those movies that kind of, at least for me, is like, I could see why one would really like it, and I could see why one would really not like it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a polarizing movie, and it's
Yeah.
kind of goes back to what you're talking about with the Eraserhead conversation. Is are you a fan of that kind of offbeat, artistic approach to
Yeah.
things that David Lynch?
Is known
kind of
for.
Yeah,
So back to sort of my connection. I hadn't seen the movie, but I remember when I think it was announced that Denis Villeneuve was going to do the modern adaptation of it. And Reese, I believe you got me the book for Christmas one year. Was it you?
Did I? Maybe.
Someone
Yeah.
got it for
Unless
you.
it was, I'm pretty sure it was you, Reese. And I read the first 2 chapters, and then I stopped.
Wow. Okay.
So
Dedicated.
and then I saw the new movie, and then I've seen the original
So
original.
that's your history. Just
I like how I said original, and then I had to do quote original as if anyone can see my finger quotes.
Yeah, you do that a lot. You're
People
very
can
physical
imagine.
with your language.
I'm a character actor.
all right. With that said, David Muad'Dib,
Muad'Dib.
do you want to give us that call to action?
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna try to do something here, Reese. We're gonna test your editing prowess.
You're
See
going to
if
do
you
this
can-
all in the voice,
Yeah,
right?
every
Yeah.
episode is a test of my editing prowess.
You're right. I want you to cut my voice and then overlay it.
I'm
over
not
top my other
going to
voice,
go to
That
that
and then
would
I
be
want you to
amazing.
lower the
I'm not
register.
going to go to
Okay,
that
do it.
trouble.
Okay, that
I don't
would
have
be
the ti- I
amazing,
don't have the
though. Do it.
time.
It
Especially-
actually wouldn't be that hard.
I don't have the time. I'm not going to do it. Just do your
Fine.
best. Do your best.
Producer, we need you to do it. All right. Listener, go on Apple Podcast and follow Franchise Killer.
Are you
Give a
Batman?
5-star review.
Maybe I should go with more of this kind of voice.
No, that
You
was
have emphysema?
no, I was a Mongolian throat singer for a semester in college. But
I was one for a semester.
they kicked me out because I
Wait,
wasn't
Batman was
Mongolian.
in this movie.
How about I just ask the people here to go follow us on Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star review, and let us know what you think. You could also listen to us on any other podcast. We have an Instagram, a Twitter. We
Listen
actually
to us
have-
on any other podcast. Yeah.
Oh,
Any other podcast platform.
platform. That's
There
what
you
I was
go.
thinking because we're on all of them.
All right, but like, this is Dune, all the bells and whistles. Imagine if you did overlay his voice like 3 times.
Yeah, but I probably won't.
But you could just
Look, we have
easily-
to ask nicely. We can argue with him later because he might do it.
We'll
I never
see.
know with this guy.
But you'd have to say it like 3 times.
Let's let David finish his piece.
All right. So we have an Instagram, we have a Twitter, we have a YouTube. We're constantly posting, and the best thing for the algorithm to help us get in front of more people is if you give us a 5-star review on Apple, because for some reason that controls everything. I don't know why. So
Well,
if
they
It's
do
like
rule
the
the world.
spice.
So
I kind of hate it. Yeah, Apple is
let
life.
the apple flow.
Yeah. So if you feel like helping us, I think I threw a
The
call to
apple
action on
melange.
the last podcast. So if you, we've only gotten 1 review since then, but if you feel like giving us a 5-star review, I will give you a free T-shirt. So yeah, if you do that and reach out to us on Instagram, free Franchise Killer T-shirt coming your way.
Yep. Bribery is the way to success.
I already
as,
did it once.
AJ already said.
Apple
last
is
And
like
it may even be in your size.
Yeah.
Apple's like the
You like
the,
XXL? That's the only one we got.
The,
Yeah,
the
so
business
share with your
version of
friends.
the
We're growing.
Harkins.
I mean, we put out several episodes. We're coming up on our 100th episode soon. So we definitely want to spread the word. We put in a lot of work for this. So
yeah.
help us out if you like us.
All right. With that said, AJ, you want to take it away with that story?
Yeah, and so in the spirit of Princess Irulan, and in her book, the book, every chapter starts with an epigraph. Frequently with Princess Irulan, we start with that in this movie as well, kind of filling us in there. But I'm going to start us on our journey through this whole segment, not just this movie or next following movies, of metamorphosis, kind of our space opera, if you will, journey of man towards Earth. Let's do that. Highbrow, yeah?
Yeah.
So, but basically...
Actually, yeah, explain... oh, sorry, you're about to. Okay.
Well, yeah, so Metamorphosis, every movie here, at least the beginning movies of the ones that have sequels, every main character has some kind of transformation revolving around their humanity. And it's kind of fitting to start with Dune because it's in a fantasy land, fantasy world, universe, what have you, farthest away from Earth, physically, because it doesn't exist that we know of. And the beginning of, or prior to the Dune story that we know, that we see in the books, and the story here, you had something called the Butlerian Jihad, which was man's revolt, a rebellion against their computer AI overlords that were kind of had gone unchecked, a la Terminator a little bit. So it was rejection of that artifice and return to humanity, and the conclusion of that was distilled into man may not be replaced. And no matter what he becomes, man or mankind at his foundation, or at the base of the pillar, if you will, from this movie, is humanity, despite any transformation or evolution. So that'll kick us off here.
All right.
Sounds like a lot
And-
like Blade Runner.
A little bit. Yeah, it's sci-fi. I mean, there's sci-fi elements, of course, here. It's a sci-fi book, but Herbert
Yeah.
kind of said he wrote sci-fi for non-sci-fi readers, so it's accessible.
Those are the two, I guess, franchises or stories that I respect the most in the sci-fi world, and that's Dune and Blade Runner.
Not
And-
Star Wars?
And who happened to gain control? Not Star Wars. I do like Star Wars. That's controversial.
Overrated.
But yes, like Reese said, I think it's a little overrated.
Anyway, I don't want to cut AJ
So,
off.
well,
I'm
I just
sorry, I
wanted to
didn't-
put a little bit of background there, and just kind of an epigraph, if you will, because I feel like those work out well. Also, just a heads up, the way I kind of wrote up this synopsis has a little bit of character to it. I guess kind of we're
That's what
watching
we
a David Lynch movie, so we'll see how this lands.
Looking forward to
And
it.
it's a long story in one movie, so
Three
hang
parts.
on for the ride.
Yeah.
A beginning is a very delicate time. Know then that it is the year 10,191. In this time, the most precious substance in the universe is the spice melange. The spice extends life. The spice exists on only one planet in the entire universe. The planet is Arrakis, also known as Dune.
You are about to enter a world where the unexpected,
Many dangers exist on Arrakis.
the unknown,
An incredible secret has been kept on this planet.
and the unbelievable meet.
I see two great houses feuding.
Where kingdoms are built on earth that moves.
On the planet Kaitan, the seat of power of the Lanzarad, we find an emissary sent from the Space Navigators Guild to meet with Emperor Shaddam Carino IV. With a notable lack of hair apparent in the room, the Emperor bald-facedly spells out his plans to dispose of House Atreides by sending them to take charge of the planet Arrakis, where all of the galaxy's ever-important spice is mined. This will ignite tensions between houses Atreides and Harkonnen, who have a 10,000-year-long feud. After eavesdropping on this conversation, the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood sets out to planet Caladan in search of Paul Atreides. On his watery Atreides homeworld, 15-year-old Paul downloads a worm on his iPad, which then tells him the bad guys want to steal his daddy's Dougal signet ring. A doctor, a soldier, and a spy walk into the room. These are Dr. Yui, Gurney Halleck, and the Mentat Thufir Howat, all close lieutenants to Duke Leto and mentors to young Paul. Gurney, the Duke's war master, has an impromptu sparring lesson with Paul to get him in the mood. Then they demonstrate a laser gun on a dancing robot. Paul stops by Duncan for a quick pick-me-up on his way to talk to his father. Duncan, Idaho, is headed out on an advanced scouting mission to Arrakis. Paul and Duke Leto look out over the sea of their homeworld, where the father actually imparts some practical wisdom to his son. But a person needs new experiences. They jar something deep inside, allowing him to grow. Without change, something sleeps inside us and seldom awakens. The sleeper must awaken. And then so Paul, a sleeper, wrestles with his strange recurring dreams of Arrakis, a moon, Fade, Harkonnen, and Cheney. But then he's woken up by visitors. The Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohiam and the BG sisters have arrived on Caladan. Mohiam scolds her old protege Jessica for breaking their master plan by having a son rather than a daughter. Nevertheless, Paul is brought before the Reverend Mother, who performs the deadly Gom Jabbar test on him, which determines that he is human, meaning he has more powerful awareness and willpower than instinct, and more importantly, he has the potential to be the prophesied Kwisatz Haderach. On Gadi Prime, Twisted Mentat Piter brings a message in a bottle to Baron Harkonnen, who is chilling out in the local beautician school. They call on Tweedledee and Tweedledum, the Baron's nephews Raban and Fade. The Baron floats like a butterfly, and Sting shows his glee while a young boy gets mauled. Finally, Paul beholds another repugnant scene where one of the Space Guild slug navigators twiddles his fiddle and blasts a wormhole to Worm Planet, bringing us to Arrakis, also known as Dune.
Desert
Not
planet.
bad. Not bad.
Oh, BG's. Benny Jesuit. Got it.
Sorry, BG is a
Jesuit.
common abbreviation for Bene Gesserit.
Yeah, I knew that.
Jesuit, David.
I'll work on it.
I like that late realization. Bee Gees.
All right, before we get into that first third of the story here, I do want to take the temperature here on Dune. This this take. Where are we at in this intro here? How are we?
Didn't they say it's pretty hot over there?
Yeah, and I don't want you to say like how it ends up, like your overall impressions, because that would
Right,
be
right.
a review of the movie. But this initial setup.
So you mean the 5-minute exposition?
No,
dump?
where AJ cut off the story.
Oh, through that first portion?
Yeah, how are we feeling about this movie?
Okay.
Intrigued?
Intrigued?
I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, I mean the intro's a little funky, but it's kind of in the style of the universe, I guess. Mm-hmm. So
If
I
you
can
latch
I can
onto the
abide by
universe.
it.
Yeah. So put yourself in the shoes of someone who has heard that this is a very polarizing movie.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and they watch it for the first time. Do you understand like why it would be polarizing based off this first third?
I would imagine it's a little different depending on whether you've read the book or not. Mm-hmm. And while there are moments that seem to be true to the book, if you haven't read it, it's probably easier to digest. Mm-hmm. And I think that at least up to this moment, there isn't anything that's horribly offensive that's happened.
Yeah.
So I could imagine, as someone that's new to the movie, other than the awkwardness of having all this info dump, it's just kind of okay, yeah, I'm not really seeing what the huge problem is yet.
Yeah.
But I'm sure by this point you would be thinking, I feel like it's something that happens later. Like, it can't be talking about this intro necessarily.
Yeah. AJ?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, I'm on board. And especially Patrick Stewart showing his face, that gets me hooked. You know, and
Yes.
I expect there to be some style in an 80s sci-fi movie.
Right.
And, you know, a little bit kind of kitschy, a little bit for, you know, I don't know. It's going to be out of this world. So there's going to be some imaginative takes on things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
especially
supposed to
with-
be 20,000 years later, so it's to be expected.
Right. Yeah. So they're making do with some of the technology they have to extrapolate, newfangled technology.
Yeah.
All, and like the kind of awkward exposition dump is
Yeah.
frustrating because you have the Emperor literally like spelling out exactly
I
like
know.
he's monologuing right at the beginning his evil master plan. Okay.
That actually reminds me of a good point because I remember all the times I watched this, even as a kid, like I didn't, even though they were explaining the plot, I never actually saw the Emperor as that much of a villain. I was like, oh, it's just this old dude, like in his room, just talking
Especially
to this obviously evil blob.
Yeah, especially with this epilogue of Princess Irulan, who really doesn't play a part later in the movie at all. Kind of this ghostly
Not at
face
all.
that randomly fades in and out.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you this. It's like, okay. Like I get that's kind of harkoning back to the book a little bit.
Yeah.
With, all her epigraphs and stuff, and that's appreciated.
Right.
And she does have a couple points where she comes in as narrator to transition a little bit, but then it just gets dropped and never followed up again. But other than that, yeah, I'm on board. I understand that there's a ton of information in this story that has to be squeezed into one movie.
And they squeeze
But-
it.
Yeah, squeeze Raban. But that's where I'm lost immediately. Is once Baron Harkonnen shows up, I'm like, what?
What is that?
Dude, the
is this
Baron
guy?
in this movie, I don't understand.
This movie is the like if there was a reason to rate a movie R for being disgusting, like that it would be this movie.
Isn't
like
the
there's
first scene you see him in, he's getting his pus pulled out
drained.
Ugh.
There's so many things in that scene where I'm like, how is this like PG-13?
Well, and then just like, what's with the reverse mohawk shaved stripe down the head?
It's just weird.
Hey, man, that's the style in the 10,000s.
I know he's supposed to be grotesque and whatever, but he's more like Ronald McDonald meets Jabba the Hutt, and they took some fizzy lifting juice from Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. It's like, what is going on?
I think that's just a David Lynch thing because I think
It's too
what
much
he's
David
about
Lynch.
is just having you look at something and be like, hey, my brain is telling me that's not the right way that's done.
Yeah.
Like,
I think there are, especially with this Harkonnen area, it's while I look at it and all my experiences with this movie, I definitely didn't like these scenes. Obviously, obvious reasons why. But these characters playing out here are a weird mix of more disgusting to me than threatening. Other than the Baron sometimes has these moments where he's just like a really creepy, gross, and honestly insane person.
Unhinged.
But aside from that, his cronies just feel very lackluster. Like I remember thinking like, what's Sting doing here? And then what is it, Raban?
Raban,
Yeah.
He just
Fade
seems
and
like
Raban.
like this goofy villain who's just kind of laughing like some kind of
Slurping on his chocolate milk.
some kind of like Disney sidekick to the villain. I don't know.
Meanwhile, Sting is like the guy, the specimen from Rocky Horror Picture Show.
He looks
Wait,
like
Rocky.
he looks
Yeah.
like a smirking anime character.
Yeah, no, he's like I don't know how the Harkonnens created such a specimen amongst you see.
I was thinking
Right.
the
but
same
somehow
thing.
he came out of this.
All these creatures
Well,
are like
that's a good point.
weird, creepy characters.
yeah.
So, I mean, there's something important in. So they're red hair. Who
Yeah.
else has red hair in this? That's a little bit of a hint. I'm glad
Right.
they kept that. But all these Harkonnen like genetics, like how do they get fade? Well,
Yeah.
actually, if you call back to the book, in the book's description, the Harkonnen household is actually known for like athleticism and strength and physique and like just brawn kind of things. And Baron Harkonnen himself used to be strong and then kind of just let himself go and then relies on the suspensors, the levitating devices to help aid him in walking. Like he's not floating around.
Right.
Like he can float, but he's like basically they they assist in supporting his weight, not him just like
Right.
floating around like a blimp.
Right.
So you're saying they got that wrong?
I love
Yeah.
to laugh.
I'm gonna say like the
Sorry.
first third of this movie that we are talking about right now. When I was told, and it had been a while since I had seen this film, so it was more just like this. Oh yeah, I saw that when I was younger. I had not revisited it.
Right.
But watching the first third of this, I was like, why is this a polarizing movie? Like, because
Yeah.
I think it's very well set up. It is definitely repulsive
Yeah.
at times, but that's by
Yeah, yeah.
design.
Yeah.
That is an intentional choice. Like,
Other than-
I'm on board with it.
Yeah, and there's some weird 80s things too. I mean, it almost
Yeah.
harkens to Neverending Story. Some like
Right.
you have the Gold Lion throne room. I mean, the Bene Gesserit sisterhood, they obviously have a very iconic look here. But then there's things like, why are there pugs and bulldogs just roaming around? And
Yeah,
why is,
there's a lot of pugs. It's like Paul Atreides he's always like he's got his pug in his arm. I'm like, what
Yeah,
is
that
the
was my
significance of that?
repugnant
I feel like
pun
the,
there.
the
Oh, there you go. Gotcha.
what do you say?
This is repugnant.
No, there, if you go back and listen to this, there's several puns in this,
Yeah.
just littered in there.
I think it's a statement of wealth is kind of what they're getting at.
Yeah.
That they're the ones that have
Yeah.
the animals, and they're kind
And-
of useless animals.
I think their family is supposed to be in this at least kind of familiar to us from a like royalty standpoint, where everyone kind of thinks of the Queen of England and all her corgis, sort of a thing. Like there's
Yeah,
this
that's true.
thing about royal families breeding dogs and keeping certain dogs a part of them. There's that association with breeding. So I can see that, and I think that's
Yeah.
kind of the role of the family, is that they are relatable. It honestly reminds me a lot of watching Game of Thrones, where it's the Stark family
Yes.
technically, where they're practically doomed.
This is the sci-fi
Yeah.
Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
in a
Yeah,
weird
and
way.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's definite archetypes like a House Atreides. They have the heritage. I mean, there's the big bull imagery, which is more in the new one
Right.
because of the grandfather and his encounter. But he literally died in kind of almost like a matador fight. Like a bull speared him when he was being too cocky, and basically the Harkonnens are kind of the bull charging, and Atreides is the matador, waving the flag and that kind of thing. But also the eagle and the hawk, like very Leto in the book is very described physically looking kind of hawkish, and the eagle obviously has kind of the pride aspect of it. And compared to Raban is literally called the beast, Raban.
Oh yeah, and he
so-
is.
Yeah, and we should probably talk about some of the other characters too. I don't
Right.
know if you want to head up. Let's talk about the three tutors. So we've got.
we haven't even
Thufir
talked about
Hawat.
Paul Atreides either.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
that's
come
true.
around to him. I wanna hit
Yeah.
some of the support a little bit more.
Most of the story will be
Thufir.
about him anyway.
Duncan
Thufir,
and,
Duncan, Gurney, and
Gurney.
Yui.
Yui, the doctor. Yeah. I don't know. I don't quite recall the specific details of them, but one thing about this that I would have preferred is if they had kind of sat with them a little longer, and
Yeah.
you get to know their characters more, because
Right.
they kind of just appear and say their bit and then move on to the next thing. So
Yeah,
you don't
they-
really get to know them that much.
They all are very important in Paul's upbringing and who he becomes as a man. And so a little bit of more background here. You have a Mentat, which is what Thufir Hawat is with the big eyebrows. and
Supreme intelligence.
There's
Yeah,
a lot
so-
of eyebrow action in this movie.
Yeah, they're kind of
Say
a
that.
human calculator. So
Yeah.
once you have the fallout of the getting rid of the supercomputers, the computer machine people, AI, after that you kind of have to still rely on some of that ability to maintain society and stuff. So
Yeah.
you have the Bene Gesserit sisterhood, which are referred to as witches colloquially, who are trained in the voice, controlling by using different sounds and modulating voice, or the weirding way, which is their
weirding
style of
modules,
fighting.
yeah.
Yeah, and then also some level of prescience, a little bit of future seeing, truth seeing, so somewhat witchcraft to the uninitiated, but they're also very heavily involved in eugenics, like directly controlling genetic lines for their own benefit, and also intertwining themselves in politics.
Yeah.
And just kind of being in the background, pulling strings.
Yeah.
So Lady Jessica is a product of that training, the Bene Gesserit or BG training. So Thufir Hawat is a mentat, which basically is a human calculator. Like, they get data and then they make,
The best strategy.
a
that they
best
should go
strategy and extrapolations from all the data, like very accurately, basically being as accurate as possible and as far seeing as possible with the good data they've gathered. If they have bad data, then they make bad predictions.
Bad data
Yeah.
from like
Well,
next generation.
The cool thing about his, I guess, three tutors
I got the data joke.
is that they kind of have their different, stance. You've got the combat specialist, you have the strategy specialist, then you have kind of the
guy that sits there.
the political specialist, more or less.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guy that sits there.
Yeah. And anyways, what's really cool though is that Paul is bred to be kind of this perfect person, I guess you should say. And then
Well-rounded.
in addition,
Yeah.
in addition to that, he has the ability of like the voice and like the Bene
BG.
he's like you don't know this yet, but he's essentially their chosen one.
Yeah.
Yeah. His mother, Jessica, has trained him in the Bene Gesserit training to basically
Yeah.
give him the best chance at being, the best he can be and successful. And so Thufir Hawat, the Mentat, is Duke Leto's like master of assassins and intelligence. And so all these people like really embody loyalty to Duke Leto, and so it reflects on Duke Leto and House Atreides in general, that he, is one that embodies or invites loyalty because of goodness instead of, he's the carrot versus the stick, which would be
Right.
House Harkonnen.
Yeah, they have that direct example. I mean, this is later on where he picks his men over the spice. So
Right,
is
exactly.
awesome.
So
Yeah.
you have the Machiavelli, ruling by love or fear. Like he rules by love and honor and honesty, integrity, that kind of thing. And that's why the Emperor is afraid of him. He's paranoid that Duke Leto could take his power because all of the other great houses respect Duke Leto and House
Yeah.
Atreides so well, not to mention their military prowess, which here they describe it as these weirding modules, which is kind of a distilled physical object to embody that, which is whatever. But then you also have Gurney Halleck, who is the War Master, who is Patrick Stewart. He's Josh Brolin in the new movie. He's one of the main physical combat trainers of Paul.
likes music.
But he also is a musician. Like he's not a bard, but
He's
I don't know.
he's almost a bard. He's like a
yeah,
That's
a
just something he
minstrel
does
kind
on
of.
the
Yeah.
side.
So
Yeah.
but he's very talented in both the sword and the artistic side of things. So yeah, all in all, Paul gets this very well-rounded upbringing in a noble house, and so he's got this culmination of. I think later they refer to it as he's the seed that lands in the rich soil to allow
Yeah.
him to become what he becomes.
Can I interject real quick and say, like, this movie has so much information that it has to convey
Yeah.
to its audience.
Yeah.
And I think the first half is much more successful at doing that than the
Yeah.
second half is. Like
Yeah.
if we actually take a like time, how much time is actually spent with these three, it is probably like 5 minutes.
Oh,
But
exactly.
Yeah, but it still gives you enough to where you're like, oh, there's a relationship here, and these three are distinctive in their various ways. And
That's why there needs to be 2 movies, and it was the correct approach to split it into 2 movies because it's such a massive book with so much information.
Yeah. But with Gurney particularly, I'm like, okay, I get this guy. I get this relationship. It makes sense. Even with Thufir, I think they do just enough to where it's like, okay, I understand this guy's position.
Yeah, that probably brings it to what my biggest nitpick is, and it's the fact that it's all crammed into there, and it doesn't leave a moment to lie for any of the great events that happen.
Yeah, exactly. Like they want to tell you things without showing you. Like for example, like you have the intro of Princess Irulan saying this, and this. Oh yeah, this. And then you literally have the Emperor saying, I'm going to do this, and this is what's going to happen. This is the master plan. Ha, 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 ha. But then you have these like key characters that you don't feel the betrayal of, okay, spoiler alert. I probably should have said this from the beginning. Like, since this goes over the full book, if you're just now, like, if you've only seen the new Dune, Denis Villeneuve's Dune, like, there's going to be spoilers like crazy. So, spoiler alert. Do not proceed forward if you don't want the rest of Dune
Turn back.
spoiled.
Yeah.
So Dr. Yui, you wouldn't know by just watching this movie that diamond on his forehead is the mark of the imperial conditioning, which, what does that mean? Like he's from the Suk school, which is like an ultra hyper Hippocratic oath where do no harm. Like he cannot harm anybody, can't kill, like ultra loyal.
Yeah.
So that makes it more effective.
It does.
Exactly.
I didn't know that.
It makes it a much bigger deal whenever he has that moment where he turns. And even then, it's like he's turning on them, but he's not fully turning.
Yeah, that's probably why he used the loophole of, hey, I'm not killing you, but here's
there's
this
a loophole.
tooth to kill yourself.
That's what I kind of liked about it, honestly, was the fact that it's more complicated than just a normal betrayal.
Well,
I actually like that.
And that's why Jessica, who has the Bene Gesserit training, like, is very in tune with people's inner motives, like micro expressions, and can read, practically read minds without actually reading minds, and read motives and stuff. Like, she kind of starts to suspect him in the book, but doesn't, because and same thing with Thufir Hawat. They don't suspect Yui because like that training or conditioning is supposed to be infallible. And then there's this whole political intrigue of pointing fingers about who's the traitor and all this stuff, which I haven't covered yet in the plot, but we should probably cover the other characters here.
Yeah, I do want to talk about Kyle MacLachlan as Paul in this role. This was his first on-screen film.
What? First
Yeah,
one?
I believe this is his first role. And he would go on to star in many David Lynch films and TVs. He's the star of Twin Peaks. And he was in Blue Velvet as well.
He's also the captain.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I think the actor does a great job. He's just not right for it.
Yeah.
I think that his hold on. His character is right. His acting is right. He's just too old.
I completely agree.
I disagree. I actually like him.
I know. I like him too. I'm just saying he's too old.
I know. I agree with Noah. There's something about him where it's like, I like him, but there's still something off about him, especially as it goes along.
Hold on. He's supposed to be 15 years old at the beginning.
He
of
looks
the book.
like he's 25.
But the thing is, for me, I'm watching this as I don't know he's supposed to be 15 years old.
Yeah,
To
but the point of it, the whole point of the character is that he's wise beyond his years. He's a prodigy in all of his ways, but this, he just kind of comes off as he's good. But
what I still think this movie conveys is that he is a prodigy. Like, I still get that sense.
But
you know?
he still has that youthfulness. I mean, he's a slight figure. So I think he does all right, especially probably one of the less good things about the sci-fi miniseries is that main actor who plays Paul definitely seems way too old. So here he seems somewhat appropriate.
At least youthful.
And here's the thing that I see, and I love the Villeneuve version. More, I like it more than this one. But a problem I see that one running into that is a problem that I don't think this one has is your transition of Paul Atreides from boy to like dude that can lead a army. Like for me in my opinion, I can't see Timothy Chalamet
You know why?
leading an army. Like, I can't see it.
Let me, Noah.
Go ahead.
Let me.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Well, go ahead, David.
It's a two-parter, and you know why? Because there's a second part to this movie that's what transitions him. We haven't gotten that yet with Villeneuve.
I understand.
Well, the problem is people equate leadership with age.
Yeah. But here's the thing. As much problems as I have with the second half of this movie, which we'll get to, Kyle MacLachlan is not
He's
the
not
problem.
bad. I don't think any of us
he's not.
dislike
Yeah.
Kyle MacLachlan.
I was actually saying that I really liked him.
Yeah.
It's just that he's not quite right.
I think
Despite-
I like him.
Despite that, he does have a good dynamic between his parents, Jessica and Duke Leto,
Yeah.
where
He does.
that does kind of put him in the hierarchy of
Yeah.
his inexperience in the world,
Yeah.
despite his prodigiousness.
I think that while we're talking about these characters and his connection to his parents here, I wanted to give a shout out to Jessica as well, because I
Yeah,
think
Sean Young.
even though I haven't read much of the book at all, she is able to carry this sort of regality and presence about her, but also really showcase that genuine love she has for her family. So I really like her character because it's kind of a side role. She's still like a significant figure, but she's able to convey that sense of connection and loyalty to her family in some ways over her Bene Gesserit training. So I really like what she's been able to do with the time she's on screen.
Absolutely. She's and honestly her character in the book is somewhat ahead of her time in terms of a strong female figure, especially in sci-fi that's usually typically a male dominated audience.
Right.
Like Jessica is a very complex character, very important character. Sean Young here does a good job at portraying that strength, that dignity, the regality, as you said.
Well, she's kind of like his secret fourth tutor in the book.
Exactly. Like almost all of Paul's existence and strength is because of her, and then there's some of the father as well. That's the humanity kind of side a little bit, but I wish this movie gave her more dialogue instead of the internal thoughts. Which this movie was too heavy-handed on the internal dialogue.
It's like
funny you say that.
it's
Someone
okay
said
every
that
now
too.
and then, but then
Yeah.
you start becoming overly aware of it, and you just imagine the actors sitting in a room being recorded whispering these lines.
I understand why they did it, because in books they often have that internal monologue where they're thinking a thing.
Yeah,
and
and-
it's pertinent.
Yeah.
Herbert
But,
uses very interesting use of point of view from characters so that you are omniscient, you know everything going on, but
Yeah.
you see it from everyone's eyes, and I think that's where that came from, but it didn't land successfully for me because it's disjointed. Like you need to pair that with actual dialogue and actual
Right.
action and interacting with, that. But
Yeah.
still, Sean Young does a good job at portraying that power.
I think
as
you're
well as-
getting the character mixed up actor-wise. I think you're thinking of Francesca Annis. Sean Young is Chani, and Francesca.
Oh, you're
is
right.
Lady
Yeah,
Jessica.
thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. Yes. Francesca here portrays Jessica very well. Like she still lends that strength to the character, the beauty, the allure, as well as the deadliness and the intelligence that eventually gets translated to Paul, or should get translated to Paul.
Yeah, that said, my memory on the books is not perfect, obviously, but this is so far a pretty accurate adaptation
Yeah.
on the books. I mean, you might have some things that are a little off, but for the most part, the events that happen are like, yeah, that's what happened, and that also happened. Sure, they might not leave things to lie because they're crammed
Yeah.
into one movie, but
Having seen
the
the
events happen.
new Dune movie and knowing this one, it was interesting watching the new Dune and realizing that they were using similar lines. And in that alone, you can tell, like, oh, they're pulling from the book. They're pulling from the
Yeah.
source material
Yeah,
here.
like the flying
Yeah.
mosquito thing.
Well, not even just lines, a framing of shots. I going
think,
into my research,
I think there's
a
things
lot
that
of similarities.
Villeneuve respects aspects of this movie.
Yeah.
And he did carry them over.
Well, because
so.
they're very
It's-
respectable.
It makes it apparent that he liked certain elements that were pulled off in this adaptation, but it's like he had this awareness of, but it could be better,
Yeah.
like let me kind of just fine tune these things.
Yep.
So
And
what also
really
lends
lean into the ambiance.
ambiance, and what also lends to that overall feel successfully in this early part is establishing a good theme musically.
Yeah.
So a lot of the music was done by Toto. I guess they wanted to do the whole plus the rains down in Arrakis.
And then you
joke,
got
I guess.
the prophecy theme by Brian Eno as
Brian
well.
Eno. And so that
They go
prophecy
so-
theme is excellent by Brian Eno.
Yes.
Unfortunately, they use it way too much. In my
But I
opinion.
love it.
It's
still
so
love
good.
It.
But then,
Yeah.
like, go watch Empire, and just imagine that they play the Imperial March when Vader walks in. Imagine they just play that all the time, like
Yeah.
every 5 minutes.
It is
Like,
a little
that's how
heavy-handed.
this got to this me. It's like, okay, where's the rest of the score? Like, you have this one theme, and then you have a secondary theme, but you just keep playing that over and over, and now it loses its impact.
Yeah.
At least it's good, though, is what I'll say.
Yeah.
Like, at least it's not generic or something that's not memorable, and they
that's
just
true.
keep. Like, it's not a Marvel movie theme where it's just like, oh, I don't remember what that sounded like at all.
Yeah.
So I'll take it.
All right. So Duke Leto, how do we feel about him?
I think my opinion is they introduce him too late into the movie. Like, I was like, where's Duke Leto? Like, the whole time you're kind of waiting for him. And this comes from someone who kind of knows Dune.
Yeah.
But when you finally see him, it almost you forget that this kid has this father figure,
Right.
where it's like you think you would establish the father figure before you established his 3 mentors, but
I didn't think about
response
that.
to
yeah,
So regarding the books, I'd say all the mentors and the father are all kind of on a similar level of importance.
As far as connection to him.
Well, I
Yes.
guess in reality, we're just used to
Well,
the father figure. having
I
more
disagree
weight.
with the way the way this movie did it, though. I think his death later on would be more effective if you knew him
Yeah.
I agree.
from the start of the movie.
I
So-
agree with that.
His belated appearance is how it is in the book. And I think it's actually a subtly smart way to have this sub theme of we have this obvious influence of the Lady Jessica on Paul, and we have this obvious influence of the trainers, the mentors on Paul. So where does his father come into play? Later in the book, Paul finds it hard to grieve his father for various reasons.
Right.
But through his entire journey and his development, his metamorphosis, and that's why I included the direct quote in the story about a person needing experiences, jarring something deep, allowing him to grow.
Right.
Without change, something sleeps inside us and seldom awakes. The sleeper must awaken. Paul comes to realize, at various key points in his life, that things that his father directly taught him, that those few glimmering, interactions he had with his father were ultra important.
Yeah.
And so his whole arc actually revolves around him realizing his father's pride.
Right.
And his respect that he has throughout, the Landsrad and that kind of thing.
It is kind of cool that his father is kind of the basis for his moral compass, and it kind of brings him that extra level because on paper it's like, oh yeah, you're the chosen one,
Right.
But everyone taught him a kind of physical value that he can be that can be used in the world, but his father kind of taught him his
Yeah.
morality,
Which
I think that-
sorry.
which
I
is
was-
really cool.
I was just gonna say it doesn't bother me so much that he's introduced later. I think I wish I had seen maybe one scene with him interacting more in his position, like in his
Yeah.
office. But as far as interacting
Funny you
with
should say that.
Paul, it makes sense that there wouldn't be a lot of interaction because especially with rulers and people of that kind of political clout with their children, they don't have actually much time to spend. So, like, in those small moments, they try to make it as significant as possible. But otherwise, a lot of those children are raised by the help or the nannies or the mentors. You know, those end up being kind of their paternal and maternal figures as they age. So it's his father represents something more. He's leading this nation. So it's more complicated, and I find that very believable in this setting. So I like kudos to Frank Herbert, because he seems like very well acquainted with how, you know, this kind of hierarchy functions.
Yeah.
Well,
And
and
that's-
that's accurate. But I mean, well, not instead of that. On top of that,
Right.
you know, it kind of harkens to the quote and the theme, the thematic, you know, thesis, I guess I would that I led with that quote
Right.
of Usul's name, his intimate name, meaning the strength, the base of the pillar.
Yeah.
Like, he's got all this dressing, the trappings of royalty, the prophecy, the Messiah complex, the Bene Gesserit weirding way, the future seeing, and the voice, all this stuff that's superhuman. But at the base of the pillar, that his strength, the core of his humanity, is from his father.
Yeah.
So I think that's really cool, and that came through from the book more so than in this movie.
I would
Yeah.
say it still came through, and mainly the part where they're at the spice mining, it's really hard not to bring up the new movie, especially
Well-
since I saw that first. But the fact that when they're at that spice mine and they're saving people, I think he even says at one point, you know, screw the spice, get
he
the
says
people out.
screw.
Yeah,
He said-
we're
no.
about to talk about that here in the next
Damn
part.
the spice.
That's
But
even worse.
what
I love it.
Irina said is, you know, I wanted to see more of him, and it's funny you say that because, so obviously Frank Herbert is alive, the author of this. During the making of this movie, he knew about the making of this movie. He actually wrote a treatment of a script that completely got disregarded. Seems like a common theme with authors' scripts getting disregarded. But Frank Herbert told David Lynch and, you know, the producers, like, literally, if you do one, don't ignore me on everything, but one thing you have to include is this scene with, like, kind of the banquet with, like, the staff meeting where Duke Leto is interacting with all the political figures and showing his, like, decency.
Interesting.
Which scene was
and how
that
he
in this?
interacts. It got cut. It wasn't one of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
movie. They
I had a
ignored him.
feeling.
Yep. So
Yeah, that's the thing that's great about the book versus the movie, and it's that they can really like take their time with moments like that, even whenever they're gonna display the absence, as you said, Irina, of the father and his political environment. They can still, whenever they have those moments, lay into them a little bit and let kind of the mood carry.
all right.
So that's kind of what's hard to, I don't know. Again, back to the nitpick of this one, too much for too little time.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
They could have
So-
made it great if they had just relaxed a little bit, made 2 movies.
So
Right.
do you all want to
yeah.
press on a little bit? Let's talk about
So,
the
we've covered
Gom
everybody.
Jabbar scene.
Oh yeah. Okay. Gom Jabbar.
Yeah. So let's move on. Paul gets suckered into this Gom Jabbar box, a test of his will and of how much he can take in terms of pain. It's something that no person can stand, apparently.
Well,
and it's
okay.
basically
People can stand it.
Isn't
I'm
it
gonna
something
correct
that's-
you here. So it's the Gom Jabbar itself is the needle, the poison needle on the finger.
Oh yeah,
The
that's right.
test
The box is
itself
something different.
the Gom Jabbar test is still referred to that, and this is something that the Bene Gesserit sisters do as an initiation thing, and the Reverend Mother refers to this as to determine if he's human or animal. I
Yeah.
mean, that's kind of a weird thing to say. Like, so what does that relate to? Well, their view of animal versus human is distilled in basically willpower, awareness
versus instinct.
It's
So-
kind of a discipline test.
Exactly. So, you know, Raban, Harkonnen, probably would be considered an animal,
Right.
because he would, pull out because of instinct, really. And
Yeah.
Paul, like with all the mental training, and they do this a little bit with the chant, the mantra, fear is the mind killer, all
Yeah.
that. Those are the Bene Gesserit tools to basically focus and that kind of thing. And something that this doesn't really, the movie doesn't tell you directly. It just kind of has the Reverend Mother like doing this weird face. But she keeps Paul in that test much longer than is normal.
Yeah.
And at a higher pain level too.
Right.
She wanted to kill him.
Well,
Yeah.
She wanted him to die.
It wasn't that she wanted him to die. It was that she wanted to make absolutely sure.
Yeah. So I think that
No, because look,
No,
think about
there's-
towards
well,
the end of the movie. She
No,
is
the point is that there's not supposed to be a male.
Yeah.
With
Well,
those
also-
abilities.
Unless
Like-
it's
Well,
the chosen one.
Yeah.
the thing is, like, I actually really like this scene, and it's probably more credit to the book than it is this adaptation. But the concept of, like, you kind of want to see her as a villain, and she sort of, in this portrayal, paints herself as, like, that school teacher that slaps
you.
your wrists,
Yep,
you
yep.
know, when you're doodling
Yeah.
during class. But the thing I like about this test and when it happens is that you think about Paul's position here. Like, he is the son of a woman that's gone through the Bene Gesserit training, and he's been taught in these ways. He's in a position of power. He's an heir. And so if he's given this kind of ability, you have to make damn sure he's worth it, or
Yeah.
like that he is not going to act on impulse and instinct.
Right.
yes.
So,
addition
like,
to
it's
that-
very important that he is very focused.
towards the end
The
of the
Bene-
movie, though. I feel like she turns coat, though. She's like,
She doesn't.
Well, we can talk about it when we talk
Yeah.
about the second section.
AJ was
but-
trying to say something though.
So Bene Gesserit are like broad schemers, like big picture overall, like for generations, literally mapping
Yeah.
and commingling specific bloodlines to basically force the Kwisatz Haderach, which is the ultimate heir,
Right.
to, basically it's eugenics. Like they want certain traits of others,
Uh-huh.
and they arrange marriages and couplings and like literally breed themselves. Like that's part of the apocryphal books, kind of the Brian Herbert wrote.
Right.
Frank.
But
No, Brian Herbert is Frank's son.
Oh,
Yeah, he
my bad.
finished
Yeah.
some of the.
Oh, gotcha.
yeah.
so there's some background. Anyway, so this particular Reverend Mother, Gaius Helen Mohayim, was the direct mentor of Jessica, and technically her mother. But basically, there is a dedicated Reverend Mother in charge of the Kwisatz Haderach project to cross the bloodlines, and Jessica was ordered to bear a daughter, and that daughter was intended to marry one of the Harkonnens, I think Fade.
Yeah, probably fade.
Right. And then their offspring was supposed to be the Kwisatz Haderach. So their
Interesting.
generations long planning was literally one generation step away from culmination.
Okay.
And Jessica
all right.
just dashed out all the pieces by breaking the plan and having a son instead of a daughter because
Yeah,
of her
that's
love for
interesting.
Which
Leto.
she did out of love for Leto.
Okay, that
Exactly.
makes more sense with the reaction that she's given. Like I think that's they must have decided not to explain that in this adaptation because it's
Right.
just a little too much.
Yeah.
But that's cool to know because
So-
that's like definitely a much more of a coat turning on her part than just I decided to have a son because
Yeah.
the Duke
and the
wanted
Kwisatz
it.
Haderach is this ultimate being that is, but they want the Bene Gesserit want that Kwisatz Haderach figure under their control. That's why they're being so careful about it. And Jessica,
Right.
trying to bring about the Kwisatz Haderach and Paul, who has the potential to be that, would be outside of their control. And so that's why they're so scrambling and frantic about this, and just trying to scrabble to regain control of it.
Okay.
But yeah,
And-
that's the perfect thing of the Dune story, though, is that he's not supposed to be part of anyone's control. He is this universe's version of the Messiah.
Okay, so
Right.
that leads to a question that I have as somebody who hasn't read the book, and I'm probably the least familiar with this storyline. I wanted to know if he was more specifically a quote-unquote chosen one, like no matter what happens, he was going to fulfill a prophecy, or did he have to sort of, like, he could have fulfilled the prophecy, but there is a situation where he couldn't. You know, did he have to sort of make sure that he was trained properly and stepped up in the right way, or no matter what, he was going to...
the way that destiny kind of works is that it just so happens that it happened that way. But it was kind of like a foretold
I think
event.
The interesting thing that, and obviously Denis Villeneuve's movies haven't come out yet, but if we're to just momentarily talk about a comparison here, it seems like the movie here's the intent is that, yes, he was destined to be this Messiah. Like, this
Right.
is the guy.
It
But
doesn't-
in the new movies, I get the impression that it's more, this has been something heralded for a long time, but it's not so much that he was predetermined to be it. It's just that he is going to fulfill the role.
That's exactly what I was wondering.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
And
the mother
see-
makes the decision for him
Right.
in the new movie.
Well,
where
in
it's
the
like, you're
books
gonna-
also,
Yeah.
like the Bene Gesserit have like planted rumors throughout the universe, like so it
Right.
even reaches the Fremen. They have their own Reverend Mother, who we'll see later on. Like so that kind of religion, so to speak, is still widespread, and it
Right.
infiltrates their own religion. So they have all these own prophecies that they mutter under their breath as they see Jessica and Paul arrive.
Okay.
And
yeah.
they just automatically assume, okay, he's the chosen one, the one that was prophesied.
Right.
But in the books, really, they're like the intellect of Jessica, and they're like trying to survive is taking advantage of that to
Right.
walk that
Okay.
tightrope to say, okay, like we will. This is how we survive, by becoming this and fulfilling this role.
Yeah.
But then thereby actually becoming it.
All right.
So yes,
cool.
there's that question of predestination versus not.
yeah.
But this movie doesn't really go in that depth.
Yeah.
Wait.
Go ahead.
I do have to move on a little bit.
Yeah.
Just
yeah.
'cause-
Sorry. We've been talking
We're
about this.
really
Hey,
far.
Yeah.
Dune,
Material.
Dune is amazing.
I know it is, but I do want to make sure we're like progressing.
Yeah,
just a little
sorry.
bit.
We're a movie
No, I
podcast, not
understand.
a not a book podcast.
So before we do move on with the story, I do want to talk about the introduction of Arrakis or Dune. We've had our Gom Jabbar sequence. Gom Jabbar.
Well, before you do that, my next section is basically them arriving on Arrakis.
Okay.
So this first section was pre-Arrakis. Now they're going to Arrakis.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll just cut it off
So,
there.
yeah,
But
I'll
we
launch-
do. Huh?
So I'll launch us on that trip.
Yeah. So AJ, take it away with that story.
Taking charge of Arrakis, Duke Leto makes a quick trip to Duncan for his morning ritual. Duncan tells him that there are a ton of Fremen natives on Arrakis that no one cared to count before. Leto, Paul, and Gurney meet with Dr. Kynes, an empirical planetologist and imperial judge of the change, who explains that they are drinking their own urine. The group goes on an inspection run of a spice mining operation in their flying craft, an ornithopter, where they have a sloppy experience with their first giant worm. The Duke shows his worth by rescuing the men and valuing their lives over the valuable spice. Back in his room, Paul tries drugs for the first time and goes on a major trip. He escapes an attack from a flying heroin needle, and the Fremen housemaid, the Shadout Mapes, warns him that there's a traitor in their midst. Duke Leto goes to clear the air with Lady Jessica when he finds Mapes dead and gets ambushed by the traitor. It was you, E. He has disabled their shields, and the Harkonnens are on the verge of invasion. Yui practices unlicensed dentistry and replaces one of the Duke's teeth. The Harkonnens overrun Arrakeen, and the Atreides fall in another repugnant scene. The Duke, Jessica, and Paul are captured. Baron Harkonnen kills Yui instead of rewarding him in a massive shocker. Jessica and Paul are sent off to get killed in the desert. The captured and drugged Duke Leto wakes up and delivered delivers his morning breath surprise. Unfortunately, his super-powered, badly aimed ballistic halitosis misses the Baron and only kills Piter, the evil Mentat. Oh, and that guy Kynes is captured and unavailingly killed in the desert too. The escaped Paul and Jessica wander the desert where they are captured by a band of Fremen who pretty much immediately accept them without question and give him the name Usul. Paul finally meets the girl of his dreams, Cheney. Meanwhile, back on Willy Wonka's Crazy Factory, Baron Harkonnen turns on the red light, sends Raban to establish a police state where he watches every breath taken by his dear Desert Rose fade. They convert the captured Mentat Thufir Hawat by making him milk a cat.
Perfect.
I'm gonna just take this moment to say I really appreciate all your Sting references for the police.
Did he say Desert Rose?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Well,
we've
a
got-
lot earlier he said message in a bottle
Oh my
in the
God.
previous
Yeah, so
section.
Message in the Bottle was the first one. Let's see. Every Breath You Take.
Yep.
I noticed that one.
Desert Rose. I think there's another one, maybe later.
Everyone appreciate the time AJ took. To put
Police
this in.
State.
So in regards to like where we're at here,
We're on Arrakis.
We are, yes. And this is just broad terms, since that's how I talk about movies versus everyone else who is very nitty gritty. That's not my forte. But in terms of like a cinematic experience, this movie has so many like high highs and low lows. Like there's so few movies where it's like, oh wow, they nailed that, and then the next moment it will be like,
Where did they go wrong?
What happened there?
I do want to say, Noah brought this up earlier about that because it's such a weird movie where you can see why people love it because there's so high highs. And you can also see why people hate it because there are so low lows.
Yep, and I was going to start with a high here, and that is just the introduction to Arrakis, like Dune. When they first like make landfall there and arrive there, you see the cigarette ship, and then like the bottom of the planet, you see and it's zooming in, and then you zoom in on the dunes, you see the sun in the distance. It's kind of Star Warsy in a way, and then the Brian Eno theme, the prophecy theme, comes in for the first time, and you're like, oh god, that's perfect. Like it was awesome. Like, yes, this is it.
And some of the visuals are amazing.
Yeah.
In this.
The thing you can't really critique this movie on is its sense of like embodying a certain mood,
and
like,
it gets the mysticism of it right.
Exactly.
Yeah, like that's what is
whether it
tonally
portrays
perfect.
that literally in the perfect way, that not so much, but
I believe this world.
This is something that both Dune 1984.
Yep,
Yeah,
84.
84.
1984 and the new one that just came out, nail, and it's the arrival on Arrakis.
I agree completely. Those are the two ones.
Just kind of the setting the scene for everything. I mean, in my opinion, one does it better than the other, but
I actually,
but they're both very good.
Before you go into that, I actually tip my hat to this movie in terms of the first like landfall on Arrakis. I think this one does it slightly better.
So
I think
You can have that opinion.
I know, but
You're allowed to have that.
initial shot of just going through the dunes with the music coming in for the first time and the sunset, like I was moved.
The wind's
almost.
blowing the
Yes,
sand.
that's what I'm
those,
saying.
those B-roll shots are really good.
This
Oh,
does
yeah.
an amazing job.
My hand is raised.
Go ahead, David.
none of our audience members can see
I
that.
know. I'm
David.
trying to talk. Everyone's so passionate. I love it.
Yep.
But I had the job in this episode of doing VFX, right? Mm-hmm. Which I do.
Oh
in a
yeah,
lot of
let's hear
episodes.
about that now.
And I don't want to talk about all of them. There's a lot that I could talk about, and maybe there's more room for it. But this scene, when I learned about the arrival on Arrakis, it's just like it kind of blew my mind on just back in the day when you didn't have CGI, the kind of creativity you had to have to make these scenes happen. It's absolutely
They did
ridiculous.
amazing.
Which is why I agree with you, Noah.
Yeah.
They're both really good. And Reese, I understand why you love this one so much. That scene, when I first watched it, I was like, how the hell did they do this? In 1984, like the perspective, they had a wide shot. You see these large ships from a wide angle, but you see people moving in a very small distance. You're like, that shouldn't be possible without CG.
Yep.
And in this scene, I won't go into the other ones, but this one specifically, they actually went to the Aztec Stadium in Mexico to build a set.
Yeah, this was filmed in the Chihuahua Desert. Almost.
That's really cool.
There's lots of things like that, and then
Another dog.
In the Aztec Stadium, which is the Mexican soccer stadium, they built a scaffolding to build the set of the ships, and they were all built in large scale miniatures.
Oh, that's so cool.
And not only that, and this is where it gets crazy, because miniatures are used all the time, and especially
Right.
in this time period, miniatures are big. But to get
Miniatures are big. That's funny.
That's an oxymoron.
to get those ships, they had the large miniatures. They had back in the background small miniatures, and then they had a cut in the floor in front of the ship. And because this is on scaffolding. Remember, it's in the air, and then they cut a hole in it so you could see people on the ground, but 200 feet away. And they held the cameras at an angle so you could see people walking. And those people aren't in the same frame as the ship, and you're like,
That's so crazy. That's wizardry.
there's so much.
Honestly, that's kind of reminding me of time to bring in the Lord of the Rings.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah,
the Hobbits
so
and
it's
the-
like
Yep.
that. Oh, I get so happy when I hear about just innovative ways of figuring out how to do a scene, because it's so easy for people to just not easy, but to just throw money at CGI effects and be like, oh yeah, just make it
Fix
work.
it.
But the fact that you have to basically be a magician in this kind of department and figure out a way to make this look believable is I get so happy seeing that happen.
I do too, and this is why in this scene specifically, when I learned about it, I was blown away because there's other uncanny scenes where like that's really good, but you can sort of understand it. This one is perfect.
Can I say, I'm going to get on a soapbox real quick. I think
After mine.
No. I am getting on top of I'm putting a soapbox on top of your soapbox.
Standing tall.
Standing on top of that.
Yeah.
like Legolas provides Gimli a box.
Oh, I love it.
Oh,
But I think CGI is a blessing.
Oh,
and it
yeah.
can be used very well. But I stand by the fact that when you have miniature structures, it always looks better than the CGI counterpart of that. Like
We're getting there, though. We're getting there.
What I think we have moved past is the practical, like making practical creatures. Like I think that's kind of a dead art. Like it won't look as good as it does if you do it in CGI.
Yeah,
now.
it's like the face of Bo slug guy in the big tank that wiggles his.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. But
We don't need that.
his weird elephant shaped nose thing.
And-
yeah.
And that's why I think we bring up Lord of the Rings. It was onto something. It had CGI creatures that look great, and it had practical sets that still look 100% perfect.
Miniatures.
Because guess what? They're real, and you
Yeah.
can touch them.
Yeah.
Like the
Well, it
only
meshes
thing
with
is
the aesthetic, the costumery of everybody else
Right.
on set as well.
yeah. And I will say, one disclaimer: I do think the worms still look great in this movie.
They do.
So-
They look amazing in this movie.
Can I pose something? And I don't want to go into depth. If you guys have any questions on scenes in this, please
Okay.
come to me because I did research, and if we don't get to it, I'd feel sad.
Well, when
Don't-
we when we
worms
get to
then.
the worms, you have to talk
I
about
have,
it,
Yeah.
I have
because they're a
things on
central
worms.
thing.
I have
Well,
things
so
on
I
worms.
mean,
the worm scene
we
is
could
the
probably.
next section.
Okay.
I mean, worms may be in the next section, but if it's in VFX, I don't mind talking about it now.
You know what? Thank you, because I do have one I did want to bring up the first time,
All
but
right,
we
yeah.
were on a roll in that first section.
Go
So
ahead.
it's
Yeah.
kind of hard to find a time. You know the body shields in this.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
yeah, the
surprised we didn't
Minecraft
talk
figures
about
having
that
an
already.
Asian
I
porno
Yes,
will say
exactly.
this is something that I feel like did not work.
So it did and it didn't, because visually,
No, it didn't.
especially in our time period, they look terrible.
Yeah.
I will say that. It looks terrible.
Yeah.
But
Oh, I was trying to convey this to Noah while we were watching, but I didn't have the research behind me like you do.
I have research.
Where Noah thought it was CGI, and I was like, no, it's actually not.
It's not.
But yeah, David, explain it.
Yeah. So I was conflicted in this because I looked at it and it doesn't look good to today's standards.
Yeah.
But from a CGI practical visual effects standard, it's complex. It's confusing because it looks good. It matches the world.
Can I
Well-
take a guess?
Please, yeah, you can take a guess.
Was it drawn in?
Maybe.
Rotoscope.
Close.
So what they did was they did draw it in, but what they did was they looked at visual effects artists who, and back in the day there was very, 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 very limited CGI. You think Tron. They looked at different variations of shields like that in a actual 3D space, and they used that as reference to hand draw because they didn't have the budget to do CGI.
Oh gosh,
And
I'm
so
trying
what
to
they
imagine hand drawing
and if you know
that.
anything about CGI, I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible. You have to do multiple plates for things that are in a 3D space, especially when it's hand drawn, because plates equal sort of depth of field. And these shields they're wearing are like blocky 3D things that are covering
Minecraft.
Think Minecraft covering their body.
Exactly, Minecraft.
Exactly. But they hand drew every single angle on a different plate. So
Oh, that's so weird.
There's just a monumental amount of artwork going in by hand on this that they
Yeah.
had to use reference for, and it took them 9 months.
That's
to
an,
do that.
that's an example
That's
of
sad.
something that's amazing but looks not great.
That's
And
what's
here's
complicated, in my
my stance
opinion.
on it. I looked at it, and here's what they accomplished, and it wasn't worth the 9 months. I'll say
it
that.
wasn't.
But when I looked at it, I was like, instead of just rebuking it completely, I kind of like cocked my head and was like, that's interesting. Like
I know, that's exactly right. And-
versus what it would have been if it were completely CGI, which I would imagine at the
Mm-hmm.
time would have just looked like absolute complete
Yeah,
garbage.
garbage. And I'm going to throw a bone to Noah on this one because it looks like CG. And I'm going to say that because I was watching a video of a breakdown of this, and a CG artist said that has to be CG when they saw it originally.
Wow.
They thought
It's
it was
because
CG.
it's so uniform.
They
Like,
did a great job on
yeah.
it.
Well,
And
it's-
it
Yeah.
doesn't look good, but they did a good
That's-
job on it.
That's the director's job to say, okay, this isn't worth it. It doesn't work. I'm sorry you put a lot of work into this. Like, you're talented people, but it did not, the end result does not belong in the movie.
I can just imagine like seeing a little bit of it after they've gone through like what 5 months.
Well, that's why
and
you
being
don't
like,
spend 9 months on something.
that's
Yeah.
that's great.
You have to have
okay.
a test for it first.
Alternatively, it could have been that the director is like, I want this.
Yeah.
And then the
There's other
artist
techniques
is
of
Lynch
like
did do
burning
stuff
the
like
film
that.
Okay.
or like
That is true.
discoloring the film. Like there's
doing
also there are other effects that you can have, like
Right.
direct manipulation of the film on those shots that could have had a similar shield glimmer effect without having
Right.
Minecraft block figures having
Right.
censored Japanese porno sex. Like
Well,
it looked bad.
And this
Not-
is this is where David Lynch, I think, Noah, you are almost correct in this, is that it was a director
okay.
choice.
Oh.
He had a lot of choice and a lot of the visual direction of this. And I believe those are one of them where he's like, I want little block figures.
So-
You just
shields.
know
Now
those
that's
animators
question-
went back home telling their wives and husbands, like, oh my God, this
Follow-up
guy is
question.
making us make block figures.
It's just one of those things that works way better with CG,
Yeah, and
unfortunately.
it did
Follow-up
in the new
question.
one. Yes.
Yes.
So they're the shield walls of the city.
Mm-hmm.
How did they do those?
No, did you have a guess or did you?
No,
wanna-
I have no idea. I don't know, but
I-
it didn't look great.
So I didn't see a video on it, but with all the research I've done nowadays, I have a very, very good guess. So what they did was they were raising these corners of a shield above the city, right? And you see
Right.
this shimmering-ish kind of effect.
Green screen?
Green screen. I believe it's green screen.
I could
believe
see it. They like slowly edited it in, rising
they
up
raised up
green screen.
a green screen because I think those pillars were real. I think
Yeah.
that the corners of those were
Yeah, they were
sheets.
built.
They were
Yeah.
green sheets being
could
pulled
see
up, and then they filmed something separately of the shimmer that they overlaid on top of the green screen.
That would make sense.
Okay.
And I have a lot of
that
other
worked.
facts too.
Cool.
That
I
checks
honestly,
out.
I feel like now's the appropriate time to talk about the.
Well,
the
some of them
worms and how
haven't
they're
come up
made.
yet, so it just
I know
depends
they
on
haven't
the-
come up, but
well,
it's
we
like
got-
We can take a
mentioned
moment
I'll
it.
give you a chance later after
Yeah.
because we'll talk about the worm scene when right now,
Okay.
I think we should talk about Kynes dying. Which, did that matter to anybody here?
All kinds of dying.
Not really.
Was that
Kind of.
Dr. Kynes,
yeah.
the planetologist.
It didn't
No,
land.
I
Okay.
don't even remember
So-
the scene.
I think
He's
a lot of
actually
it-
a critical character, and if you've seen the new movie, that's a gender swap, which
Yeah.
that's a whole whatever other conversation. But
No, I liked him. I liked him in the Thopter scene.
yeah, and so that's actually like you alluded to earlier, is that Thopter scene rescuing the spice workers, spice miners, really brings out an essence of Duke Leto's character.
Yeah.
And valuing the men's lives over the all critical spice, especially how important the spice is, and how basically with the giant monologue of the Emperor in the beginning, I'm going to get rid of the Atreides by pitting them against the Harkonnens, yada, yada, yada. Like, this is the judge of the change, who's basically coerced into not having a fair transition of power because the Harkonnens basically leave everything broken to them and all sorts of traps and stuff. But it falls on deaf ears because Kynes is kind of bound by his, basically, he's coerced by the Emperor. But on the other side of that, he's a planetologist where he actually cares about, the planet of Arrakis. He studied it.
Yeah.
His father studied it. And you have this the ecology of everything. And actually, the ecology is what Frank Herbert studied and what got him into writing this story. Like him visiting sand dunes in, I think, Oregon, literally led to this story.
Oregon has sand dunes?
Yeah, David. So the thing that just before we went into this episode, I was having a conversation with my dad where he was actually telling me that very thing, that he got some of his influence from being in Oregon.
Yeah.
And so and we had just visited there.
We sure did.
About a year ago. So it was kind of a weird happenstance in that we're talking about it
That was
now.
a great trip.
And the novel Dune, I mean, has so many layers of themes, and Frank Herbert doing interviews, talking about his book and why he wrote this book and how the process of writing the book. And the ecology is important, like the planet and all those things. Kynes is almost the surrogate of the author in this book, and he just gets written off.
Yeah.
In this movie,
Very
where no
little
one
to
remembers
do in
who he
this
is,
movie.
especially being Chaney's father. And Kynes has kind of got a foot in both camps. The off-worlder, but he's also Fremen. But he's also distrustful of the off-worlders. He's like, okay, just another family of royals that whatever.
Right.
But then he constantly gets surprised by Duke Leto and Paul and comes to accept them and basically commit treason to help them and all this stuff. And then his dying scene in the book is a huge pivotal point, like the pivotal point almost of the book, where he has this mirage conversation with his dead father and about the ecology of Dune and the nature of the spice and the worms and nature of so much and becoming part of the planet. And it's very esoteric almost, but it's integral to the story and the theme of the story. And this character here just got shafted.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
It's really unfortunate because he has this very likable energy from just watching this film. I love the actor here because he does give off this impression of someone I would like to learn more about. But then I think the period of time that's spent between the moment that you're introduced to him and then he dies is very short. So I remember going through that point where I'm like, oh man, he died. Okay. But it didn't hit that hard because you kind of pass through all these characters so quickly.
Yeah. So to kind of enlighten y'all to a bit of the, y'all probably already know, but I don't know why I have to say enlighten, but this was part of my research for this was to just basically the production of this movie, which was very fraught with, it was a troubled production. There's a lot of things in this movie. This is the one David Lynch movie where he looks back on it and he's like, that was a failure. Like
He doesn't
looks
want his
back on
name
this.
attached to it.
Yeah, he didn't want his name attached to it. He agreed to have it attached to the final cut of the movie, but there were multiple like extended cuts that were like put on television where he was like, "No, don't even think about putting my
I think
name
it
on
was
that thing."
smart to put his name on it.
Yeah,
though.
but there was the rough cut of this movie was 4 hours long.
Holy shit.
Yep. And as I alluded to earlier, he wanted this to be 2 parts. This was original, and before that, I said it already, but Ridley Scott was going to direct this movie. Funny connection, by the way.
Blade Runner.
Ridley Scott was going to direct this, had the treatment for the script and everything, ended up passing on it after something like 7 months of work on the picture.
Well, he had
Ended
a
up
death
doing
in the family.
ended up doing Blade Runner instead. The funny connection here is that Denis Villeneuve directed the sequel to Blade Runner 2049, and then directed Dune Part 1, and will be directing Dune Part 2. So he's almost the heir to Ridley Scott in a
there's
weird way.
Yeah.
One thing that even connects all of those as well.
What?
And it's something that I just found out right before this episode. Guess who was involved? And I think because of Ridley Scott, it's a little bit easier to understand.
What?
H.R. Geiger.
Yeah,
did-
Alien.
Yep.
Yeah, he was a big in on this movie as
What
well.
a weird guy.
H.R.
Yep.
Geiger created the original production art for the.
Oh, I bet he was super
For Alien, yeah.
I bet he
No.
was he was super excited to
yes,
work on this
but-
movie because those weird creatures with like the pig anus mouth.
You're gonna let
mouths.
me finish, aren't you?
No, because this is my segment, and you can
No.
back.
No,
off.
H.R. Geiger created
Sean
it for
Young
the
is in this and Blade Runner.
Jodorowsky version.
Yep.
Yeah,
And he didn't create it for this version, and people were actually kind of getting on this movie about like, hey, you kind of used H.R. Geiger's artwork for this, and they're like, no, we didn't. But if you look at some of the original artwork that was used to sort of work on the Jodorowsky work, you're like, okay, I know you're saying you didn't, but you did.
yeah,
Yeah.
No,
Well,
he
explain to the audience what the Jodorowsky.
The Jodorowsky, and maybe one of you knows a little bit more. All I know is that in the 1970s there was a sort of failed production attempt of Dune,
Yeah.
and I don't know the details of it, but he was and it was supposed to be Ridley Scott, and H.R. Geiger was producing the artwork for Ridley Scott to work on it.
It was such a weird project because he had people in mind to be a part of this cast, like the Emperor. He wanted Salvador Dali to play the
Yeah.
Emperor.
It's very
Like, I'm like-
70s influence, 60s, 70s influenced take on things, but
Yeah.
very passionate. And there's still
Yeah.
a lot of like kind of ripple effects from it. And there's a good documentary on it too.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
that
really?
production never got finalized. But
Yeah.
there's a wealth of information just because of that Jodorowsky project.
Anyway, back to David Lynch, though. There was a 4-hour rough cut. He actually cut it down to a just under 3 hours final cut, which is the one he really wanted. Universal was like, nah, it's got to be, weirdly, specifically, it's got to be 2 hours and 17 minutes. That's the max we're going, and that's the cut we have, the 2 hour and 17
That's how
minute
much
version.
there
film we
a
have in
chance?
the warehouse.
Is there
Yeah.
a chance we get a Zack Snyder Justice League kind of
Okay,
final
so,
cut?
so funny. Universal actually since then has reached out to David Lynch to potentially like, hey, can we do work on a director's cut of this? And David Lynch I think he's completely disowned this project. I think
no.
I think it pains him to even think about it or revisit it. So he has denied all of those. Like, we're not getting
It's okay because we get
I know. No, I love Denis Villeneuve is one of the greatest directors of our time.
Yeah, but we're talking about things that are left out of this movie, things that don't feel developed. I'm thinking there's maybe a version of this movie that has all of
there's
that.
a great
Well, yeah,
version.
I
more
think
developed.
honestly, the proof in that is what we talked about in the first part of this film is that while we were watching it, we've all kind of agreed, oh yeah, this is pretty good. Like it's not horrible. It's not offensive. Like it's kind of following the plot lines, but once we get to this next part, you start seeing kind of this
Everything starts
roughly
to
put
unravel.
together
Yeah.
story where and I was describing to David as I was watching it that what it felt like to me watching this was they had a script, like someone had a script laid out, and then they got to this point where someone told them, oh, hey, we need we need to have this out in the next month.
Yeah.
And then they just started like scrambling and trying
Yeah.
to write out
Now-
something really quick.
And yeah,
I'm gonna be the
I don't think
cynic
that's
here.
the case. Yeah, I don't think that's the case.
No, yeah, I know it's not, but it's like that's the impression it gives. Like there's a
Yeah.
certain attention that's put in the first part of
Mm-hmm.
this film that isn't replicated
Not
in
at
the
all.
rest.
David Lynch actually had, and you're right, it is not included in the rest of this, or
Right.
stuff was cut out. But David Lynch, I'm quoting from memory here, so it's probably wrong, but I think he did like 7 different revisions of the script and had a final treatment that he was happy with.
Okay.
So the script was fully done,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I just think stuff was cut out, and
Yeah.
Well-
that is
That, and I mean, I'll be the cynic here, and that there's the excuse of studio meddling is used a little bit too often, in my opinion. And I'm sure it is a factor. I'm not denying that.
I bet it is.
But there is, some things that still made it on the screen that David Lynch wrote the screenplay for this.
Yeah.
And yes, it ended up that long, but there are also elements of this movie that are kind of in focus that don't need to be there at all.
Right.
Like the whole focus on the weirding modules, and like that wasn't really a part of the book at all. Like, why are we focused on that
Yeah.
versus some of these other things that could have been developed that, so you put screen time on that, or even effort and energy on. So, I mean, I'm sure it's a bit of both. I'm sure there is studio meddling that cut
yeah.
a lot of stuff that's important, but also some of the original direction is at fault, in my opinion, too.
Yeah, it's always complicated in the end, but yeah, and I think I would agree with you there because there's definitely moments where it's like David Lynch couldn't help himself but kind of indulge in his weirdness.
Yeah.
Where I do feel like a lot of the time spent in the Harkonnen area isn't necessary exactly to the plot. There's just a whole lot of like, hey, let me show you like how weird we can get with this.
Do you know
So-
what my main problem in this first and middle section is that they set Baron Harkonnen as like, okay, this is the guy that Paul Atreides is going to take out.
He's a whack job.
Yeah, like there's going to be some final confrontation between these two guys. Mm-hmm. Nope. I'm just going to say that.
Well,
one of my-
he's
You were saying-
simultaneously this super intelligent, plotting, maniacal villain
Right.
pulling the strings on everything, but he's also this complete buffoon. Balloon
I know,
goofball.
right?
Like,
like
What?
whizzing around in the
Yeah.
steam, just laughing. I'm like, how the hell did this guy like
the-
keep this nation running?
The one thing that I give props for that is that as goofy or whatever as he is, I think the point was was to display the depravity and
yeah, I get that.
and ill-fitting nature for the throne he is.
Yeah, I do get that, but I think it can be showcased in a shorter amount of
Yes.
time. Because
fair.
I've seen enough David Lynch work to know when he's just kind of like, I want to be artsy and out there
Yeah.
right now, you know? And I
we
think
wanna
it's a
talk
little too indulgent, especially when you have such an important moment as Paul's mother, Jessica, giving birth to Alia, who's supposed to like inherit a lot of these abilities that the Bene Gesserit already have.
My biggest issue
And
with this movie.
that moment is glossed over as like, and then Jessica gave birth, and we don't see anything of the child. We just kind of move on to Paul falling in love with Cheney, and Cheney, by the way, is like a nothing character in this.
Yeah.
Like she's just there to support him, I guess.
What a waste.
Her
But
role
I-
is like me basically every time it cuts to her thinking, oh, she looks like Emmy Rossum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, I'm missing out on this integration where Paul, it becomes familiar with the Fremen way. And I think
Yep.
that's vastly important. Like, you're on this planet for a reason. You're trying to fulfill this role, and you're just taking a moment where all these major life moments happen, and they're just glossed over with a princess you don't even meet talking about it. And
So-
and then that's the part that bothers me the most.
yeah. And so that integration with the Fremen society, that's just immediate and like happens because it's supposed to happen.
Exactly.
This entire movie, probably, I was going to say this in my review, and I'll probably say it again, but especially the second half. The problem with this entire movie and the storyline, the pace, and everything, I've tried to watch this movie like several times and fell asleep there several times. It's because this movie feels like an extended montage. There's no connective tissue between any event in this movie.
all.
It's just montage with music theme. This happens, blah blah blah. Big scene, explosion. Oh, internal dialogue. This I don't know. And so
This isn't
it's
Sorry, go ahead.
he goes with Cheney because he's supposed to. And then he's the leader of the Fremen because he's supposed to. And then he destroys this because that's what happens in the story. There's no lead-up production build-up to develop the character, develop the plot, develop anything, the relationships. I don't know. And that flies in the face of what Frank Herbert wrote. And, you know, a lot of this is commentary on inspiration of Lawrence of Arabia and, you know, the white savior kind of thing integrating with, you know, the natives, indigenous people of this supposedly tribal society and becoming their savior, their messiah, and the fallibility of leaders versus people trusting leaders.
Right.
But here we just said, oh, he's the leader, he's the messiah, he came, like he saw, he conquered, like everything's good now. Like I don't know. It's frustrating.
Yeah, it's frustrating, especially since like I know this isn't the direct intent, but when Paul is leading the Fremen, by excluding these moments of him understanding who they are and getting to know them on a deeper level, it comes across to the audience as a personal vendetta he has, where he's just using them to get rid of the Harkonnen. It's not that he's fighting for them. So I think this is one of the biggest examples to me for people who kind of just go, ugh, I hate dialogue, or like I hate dramatic moments between people. It's like, no, those are important because you need that so that these moments where you're satisfied with the culminating result really hit hard.
I'm going to rein us in because we're getting a bit far ahead. So
sorry.
Let's focus on, do we want to talk about the ornithopter scene, the rescue of the spice crawler?
Oh my gosh, I forgot that we were that early on.
and this is slight spoilers, as we've already referenced to the new one. I was surprised by how similar these sequences were.
They're very similar.
Like, they even have that scene of the vibrating sand, like the undulating sand.
There's a word for that, actually. And it's called liquefaction. There you go.
Cool. That was worth it.
Sorry. I had a thing on it.
No, I think, and this is another, as I said, this movie it's a movie of high highs and low lows. I think the spice rescue scene is a high. Like when you first see the worms, the depiction of the worms, the creation of these worms, I think it's stunning. I thought this was an excellent sequence.
They did
and that's where the
amazing with the worms.
Internal dialogue does work with Kynes' internal dialogue and Paul's probing questions, and it's like almost getting there to him having that prescience where, you know, Paul, even without his superpowers, like he's intelligent, and it's almost like a Sherlock Holmes blended kind of space with sci-fi and all this other stuff, but he's got this power of deductive reasoning that is just completely glossed over because he suddenly gets superpowers. Like, that's why he's such an interesting character, because we see his struggle in coping with his powers, but he also came from somewhere where he had this ability, the deductive reasoning, that he was a trained and learned ability. But we don't get any of that in his character. And they just try to gloss it over by having everyone have internal monologue, and it just doesn't. It's just too isolated, too staccatic, and it doesn't land.
You know, one indicator as to why I think the extended cut of this movie that will never come out is exceptional compared to what we got. I actually like both versions of Paul Atreides. Like,
yeah, I agree.
The problem with this movie is it doesn't show the transition from version A to version B.
Yeah,
like, because I believe him as a leader when he's at that moment. and I believe him as this boyish, like, naive, talented, gifted kid in the beginning. Like, I believe both sides. I just think like there's this missing link in the middle of this movie that shows that transition to
We
that
all think
character.
that.
Well,
Yeah.
we see the scene where he experiments with the Dune spice, which is a drug. I mean, the spice does have a natural effect on everybody to have that kind of opened awareness a little bit, and it affects him particularly hard because of his latent abilities and his training. But then we have the attempted assassination with the hunter seeker, the flying needle worm thing, and his endurance of that scene is supposed to highlight his self-control and being still and also thinking things out, but also his athletic prowess and snatching it out of the air, and then his morality too, because when the Shadow Mapes walks in, it's attracted to motion, so it goes towards her, and she even says herself, at least in the book, you could have just let it kill me, and then you would have had your chance. Well,
I feel like Linda Hunt was just trying to die in this movie. Like she's just always in the path of danger.
But the Fremen that's kind of our first introduction to the Fremen society, this foreign element. And then we go to the kind of this. This is another part that gets really condensed from the book, is from that assassination attempt. She says there's a traitor, and then suddenly we see the treason of Yui killing the Duke. Whereas in the book, there's all this lead up of, and this political intrigue of who's the traitor, pointing fingers, establishing doubt, sowing doubt within House Atreides, and all this stuff that just completely gets missed, and would have really helped add some depth to this movie on top of all this kind of artsy sheen.
I did have one of those movie moments though in that scene where the tooth scene, where I had seen the movie a million times. I knew exactly what happened, but the movie transported me to where I was like, oh, maybe they could kill the Baron here. Like it was one of those moments where I believed, even though I had seen the movie already, that he could kill the Baron.
But you almost don't care
even
because
though I
he's
know
such
it's
a
not gonna
goofball instead of like a Darth Vader type.
Yeah.
He's supposed to have like gravity, literally and figuratively. Like he's supposed to be this imposing figure with just dark, deep malice, and despite his grotesqueness, instead of just this stupid clown. Like
yeah. Well,
the
what'd y'all think
contrast
about
between
the
Leto and Vladimir doesn't work.
Yeah.
What'd y'all think about the whole kind of taking out the Atreides stronghold, the whole bombardment of their establishment, I guess? Like, I thought it was pretty impressive, at least for the time that in '84, it looked pretty good. With all the miniature use and the explosions and everything. Like, I was pretty impressed.
Patrick Stewart holding a pug and a bazooka or whatever.
The pug comes back in. Maybe I'm the only one, but Duncan Idaho's death is traumatizing in a weird way.
Yes, in the way that it happens, but super underwhelming and not let up properly.
I've as a kid watching this movie, I had never remembered who Duncan was. I remembered his name, but because he's literally only in 2 scenes, like the scene where he's talking to Paul, where he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to Arrakis," and then later when he gets shot in the head.
Something about those shields, though, makes it more traumatizing. Where it's like it slowly gets through the shield and then embeds the bullet. Embeds in
Not
his
to bring
forehead.
up the new movie,
Well,
but imagine if they did that the same way in the new movie. Imagine that slowly penetrating.
No, there's
it
something.
kind of
No,
does.
Yeah.
I defy you, David. I think the 80s sheen on this makes it more disturbing. I don't know why.
I will tell you why it's less disturbing if you want.
No, I don't want you to tell me. This is all.
Then I
This
won't.
is all me.
That's all
The problem is there's no like dramatic suspense because you don't have the political, like they're using atomics, which are like banned. Like that's not even a question. No one even thinks someone's going to use atomic weapons because it's unheard of, especially in reaction to shields and lasers in this world. Lasers combined with the shield technology to create atomic explosions. And then, the whole fighting style of fighting with a shield and the delayed pass through the shield. And Duncan being relegated to this role, like I literally wrote him in this synopsis as Dunkin' Donuts, like he stopped to get coffee, where he's so much more in the story. Like it's
Yeah. I just think I'm almost more disturbed though by like anticlimactic deaths that kind of happen out of nowhere and then they move on.
Yeah.
Because I don't know why.
If the buildup is right.
Yeah.
If someone builds a character up and then the rug is pulled out from under your feet, like that's how I see anticlimax working well, because you're put so off balance.
Yeah.
But when that character is not established in the first place and it's anticlimactic, then it's just pointless.
Yeah. Also, can I say, like, I'm running the PG-13 test again. Like, since when did a bullet in the head, like visibly a bullet straight through the head and then bleeding all over the face? Since when was that not like qualifying for rated R?
I can tell you if you'd like.
No. Usually, people get shot in the head in PG-13 movies all the time, but it's not normally as like gratuitous as what it was in this scene.
I just throwing this out there. I think because I watched the first time and I felt similarly, I just watched it again, and it didn't hit the same way. And I think that you may be overhyping it.
I am not.
Then all right. Let me explain.
Okay, no. I think he is valid in this
I didn't even get to say
go
what I
ahead.
was saying.
Sorry, go ahead.
I want David to say his piece.
Yeah, the validation in this is that you see a bullet hit this weird shield thing. We've talked about it before, that sort of Minecraftian shield. It hits that, and you don't, unlike the new movie, you don't see it sink into the shield. It just shows it hit it, and you don't see anything, and then they cut to a hole in his head.
No, you see.
Oh, I promise you, I just watched it.
No, I just watched it. It slows down. You see the bullet slow down in the shield. Yes, you do. I guarantee you.
All right. Here, y'all are both right. The bullet does slow down once it hits the shield, but then after it gets through the shield, it appears in the head.
You don't see it sink into a head.
Okay,
you do
either
not
way.
see it sink into a head.
But here's the thing. Before we move on, I gotta hash this out with David because he's wrong.
I'm not wrong. I'm ready.
There's a PG-13 rule, and I know this because it was a thing in the Avengers.
And it was also
where the Avengers was trying to avoid the R rating. I know the Avengers is the most PG-13 movie you've ever seen, but they could not show Loki, or he was impaling what's his name, Agent Shield dude.
Coulson.
Coulson. They could not show the blade penetrate through the other side. Like, they could show him being stabbed, but if you showed the blade come out the other side, that would qualify it as R rating.
Oh, you know what that also tied
into?
What?
Does that mean that the X-Men movie where the
Logan?
coin goes through his head, what is it?
Oh yeah, no, I know.
X-Men
First class.
Origins
So
or First
penetration
Class,
is
yeah.
where
The difference
the line
with
is
that
drawn.
one is I don't think they show it from the side profile, and I don't think you actually see it go through. You see it from the side, but you don't see.
But it goes slowly
I
into
know.
his
What about-
forehead.
No.
They
When
probably
in
found a
the
loophole.
Harkonnens, they pull that heart plug out and the blood goes everywhere.
That was more traumatizing
That
than the
part
bullet.
was like, bleh.
I don't know why David fights me on
No,
these
no,
things.
no,
but-
no. Watch this movie. If you see someone pull a plug out of your heart and blood pours out of it, that is
But-
way more disturbing.
Bottom line, yes, I think we can all agree it's weird that this movie is just PG-13.
Yes.
But it should be R. Reese and I can agree on that. It should
Yeah.
be R. This
Yeah.
is a disturbing movie.
Yeah. All right, moving on. We spent too much time on that headshot scene.
I know.
But
Okay,
for me, it was
so-
disturbing.
It
I'm gonna
was
direct
disturbing
us-
for me too.
All right, so we have Leto delivering the poison gas, climatic,
tooth.
anticlimactic for you guys.
That was a very aggressive gas out the mouth. I'll just
yeah,
say
it was
that.
super.
They had that
what did I call
whole-
it? Where did it put this?
They had that whole explanation of the tooth, whereas like they were really trying to drive home to the audience, like it's in the tooth. They said it about 10
I
times.
think because they didn't.
It's because it's supposed to be mimicking the book where
Yeah.
when Leto is drugged, Yui is trying to impress on him this subliminal,
Yeah.
like, remember this. This is the last act you have to do. Everything hinges on you doing this, otherwise everything's
Right.
for nothing. Because
Yeah.
of Yui's imperial conditioning, how is that broken? Because he's basically thinking that he's not killing someone directly. he says that the Duke was already dead, so he's using his death to eliminate the Baron Harkonnen.
Right.
But if he doesn't remember the tooth, then that's all for nothing. But in his drugged state, it doesn't translate well to the screen here. Is like he's basically saying to himself the tooth or something about a tooth. Remember, as he's in and out of consciousness, and then he releases his super-powered, badly aimed ballistic halitosis, as I referred to it.
Dang, that smells bad.
Just blast of gas and misses the Baron.
Yeah.
And by misses, in this specific movie, a little underwhelming. He didn't miss. The guy was just not there. He just hit the wrong guy.
I think in his drugged up state, he was still seeing like the vision of the Baron, and so he's like,
there was a
superimposition
superimposition of faces.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what happened. Like, he could have killed him there, but nope.
Yeah, it's just
Well, Piter.
unfortunate.
How do we feel about Piter? He's just annoying. Like, he's supposed to be this mentat that's like conniving and this master. Like, all of this planning is actually his plan.
You know, it's
but
funny,
in the end,
for the
he's
longest...
just like kind of like this insect.
Worm
For the
tongue.
longest time, I was like, this guy gives off real, like, Grima Wormtongue energy.
Yep.
And then, like, I didn't even think to look up
funny
the
you say
actor.
that.
Yeah, but it is him.
Yep.
And then,
He does the
Yeah.
same thing.
and then the Baron, have another Lord of the Rings moment, pulls a Gollum moment. He's like, the ring. Where's the ring? The ring is...
Yep.
Where's
They're all
the
after
ring?
the ring. Yep.
This one had more emphasis on the importance of the ring, but there wasn't any importance
it was
in it,
dumb.
and except that the Baron just wanted it.
When did this book come out?
50s, right? Yeah, it's like 50s.
Yeah, they're
60s? Might be 60s.
Essentially,
don't know.
I thought perhaps that maybe he wants it to like forge documents with the signet, but then I realized he literally just wants it as a trophy.
That's Paul's father's ring, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
The betrayal, so Yui being the traitor, was that a surprise to anybody?
No.
No, and it's hard to say because
Well, there's that scene where, what's
He
her
gets a
name
secret
is just
message in the dead
analyzing
body.
him. And you knew that something was up, where he's like,
Yeah.
he's hiding something.
Right.
Like,
and
It
they
would've been more
didn't pay that
successful.
attention to anyone else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would have been more successful if they built up what's the Imperial conditioning, why do they trust him,
Right.
had this moment of doubt, but then, oh no, it's impossible, and then
Yeah.
spread doubt on these other characters, and oh, it's Yui. Like, that would
Yeah.
hit harder instead
Yeah.
of, oh yeah, it's this guy that no one cares about.
Yeah.
Yep.
AJ, you want to bring the story home and we can talk about any loose ends that we missed in the middle
Yeah,
portion?
so, and then Thufir milks a cat, and that was...
Who cares?
That was odd.
Actor too, because he's this super well-esteemed mentat that's been in family generations, ultra loyal. That was just weird
Yeah.
and unnecessary.
There was a rat strapped to the cat as well.
Yeah, it's some black
Yeah, that
lights.
wasn't even explained either.
Yeah. It's just like,
because it's not in the book. That's just a David Lynch thing.
Yep.
Get a cat
Okay,
and
thanks,
milk it
David
and put it
Lynch.
on a
Really
black light.
needed
It's
that.
sci-fi. All right. Paul gains the trust of the Fremen under the mantle of Muad'Dib, tames his first sandworm, and assumes the role of their messianic figure. Jessica drinks some water of life, aka poison worm vomit, in a rather unceremonious ceremony that kills the previous Fremen Reverend Mother, whose role Jessica now holds. Complicating matters, Jessica is pregnant with Duke Leto's daughter, Aaliyah, who also achieves nirvana in utero. She is then born with all the powers and abilities of a Reverend Mother, and can understand dirty jokes at 5 years old. Paul rapidly grows in rank and leads the Fremen on jihad against the Empire, controlling the spice by destroying the flow of spice. Paul gets bored of seeing normal visions and decides to guzzle the water of life for himself, which unlocks his full potential as Kwisatz Haderach. With his newfound power, he controls the forces of the planet. The Emperor arrives on Arrakis to scold Baron Harkonnen when Paul and Aaliyah confront him, and they have an epic showdown. Paul turns off Fade's red light and demands the submission of the Empire. Why
is that
can he
another
do this?
Sting reference?
Because he's the Kwisatz Haderach.
Yep.
There it is.
There she blows. Yeah, I think this is where the movie kind of falls apart for me.
So first, let's talk about the sandworm sequence.
Yeah.
Sandworms.
So I like that. I like the sandworm sequence a lot. You get the blazing guitars from Toto finally, where it's like, yep, this is Toto scoring this here. A lot of green screen, but I think it's an effective sequence, even though I don't think there's enough like ramp up to it. Like it's just kind of
No.
like we have our scene of I actually really like the scene of Paul Atreides showing them how to use the weirding ways and showing the weapon and all that, like
it's so
blasting the
unnecessary.
obsidian. I like that scene though. I like it because
It's okay.
It is, but then he just stands in front of the masses in this like narrow corridor,
Yeah.
and is automatically the leader telling them what to do because
Yeah,
he's
there's
already
no
established
build-up
in the
to
Fremen.
it.
There's no buildup of the tensions
Yeah.
of the outsider, and then as he gains power, the whispers of the prophecy: is he the one? Is he our savior?
Yeah.
And then him vying the tensions between him and Stilgar, who's the Naib of the Sietch, the leader, the chief, and the tension between the loyalty versus their tribal cultural ways of basically by supplanting him you have to kill him, and then you take
Yeah.
control, and like none of the Fremen culture here is explored at all. It's just automatically
not at all.
They're just
white
there.
savior. Paul is the leader now because he's the Messiah, because he's got superpowers and he's using them as tools, like Irina said. There's no exploration of him learning about them, becoming one of them. It's I don't know. It's just
It's
destroys
almost
the
as
story.
if there's a cut of this movie that we didn't see.
Yeah.
Also, I don't think any of us brought it up, but the fact is he's showing them how to use this voice weapon. There's only one when they arrive, but everybody gets one by the end.
Well, okay,
Yeah.
no, that's because there was a plan. So when Dr. Yui, part of his saving his moral guilt, whatever, when he delivered the Duke, he was the one that supplied them with an escape route to save Jessica and Paul. He supplied them with still suits to survive the desert. And also there was the ring, the ducal ring, which Paul was supposed to not wear until he was ready to lead, but he just put it on right away. And then there was also like paper blueprint plans of these weirding modules, which again, why are they in this movie? Like that was not a thing in the book.
Yeah.
Wait, what weren't a thing in the book?
The
The
weirding,
weirding
modules.
like the laser
Really?
guns.
It was just the voice, I
Interesting.
think. Yeah.
Interesting. I thought it was an actual thing.
I kind of like them though. Like I don't hate them.
No,
I think it's
okay. Here's another thing with the book. Frank Herbert specifically toned down in sci-fi the aspect of technology because it's supposed to be about mankind.
Yeah.
But here you have basically like literally they had this revolution that brought them to where they are, getting rid of AI and computers and relying on human ability. But now they're bringing back technology.
that's what I like about
it's
that.
It's counterproductive.
But I like it. It's something this movie shares with Star Wars actually, where it's like it is sci-fi, it is futuristic, but it's also old.
Yeah.
Like it's like I don't know,
I think there's a thin line between sci-fi and,
How thin?
and cyberpunk.
Well, okay, so here's the thing: is it's basically again using the Fremen as tools. It's basically giving gunpowder to Native Americans.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just it doesn't work. It destroys the story. Instead of Paul becoming integrated with the Fremen, learning their ways, teaching them his ways and his combat and his training, and empowering them instead of just giving them rifles,
Right.
giving them laser guns. It's flat. I'm sorry, I don't like it.
Yeah. I wish it was more just about the voice and finding this like inner power. Yeah, I don't think the weapons actually serve any purpose. I think they were cool in the beginning when Paul's using them. But yeah, I don't know why they have to be a part of like integrating with the Fremen. So I do agree with you there. But, you know.
So where are we as far as the
Okay,
plot
so
goes?
he tames a sandworm, which again, no lead up to like that's a big deal. That's his basically.
I know, right?
Becoming a man in Fremen society,
And
that's when he
nobody's
gets his
showing
name
him.
Muad'Dib.
Yeah, nobody's showing him an example of that.
The thing though, in a vacuum, this sequence is very cool.
Oh, yeah,
but
it
you need
is.
like you need like at least 15 minutes of like training montages
Right.
to lead up to it.
Honestly, going back to an episode that we have talked about already, I had similar feelings about John Carter.
Yeah.
Where there are sequences that are, yes, by
a lot of
definition,
similarities between this and
very
John Carter.
cool.
Yeah.
But it's almost like they just jump to every cool sequence.
The victory and
And-
triumph is
yeah.
like half-hearted because there was no struggle.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel that very strongly with this, where I'm like, yeah, I can
Yeah.
see why these are cool sequences, but it makes sense with the fact that he had to condense the film down. So I can
What's
see how
weird-
like they cut all those scenes and
What-
knew they needed these in there.
What's weird though is like you do get the sense that this is a movie that had major cuts.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the first half doesn't seem like much was cut out.
No,
like,
it
yeah,
doesn't.
there's
Not at
certain
all.
things. There's certain things where I'm like, oh, I could have used more of those mentors
Right.
stuff, and maybe more of Duke Atreides in there somewhere.
Yeah.
But the second half, I feel like they really took a lot out.
Right.
Like I'm
Yeah,
just
it's definitely a second half.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I was looking at the time as I was watching this movie, and you're like an hour 15. I was an hour 15 in, and they crashed their ship, or the Thopter crashed, and I was like, oh, now this is the part where they integrate with, or he meets the Fremen, and then he becomes this savior. And I'm like looking at the rest of the time in the movie, I'm like, you have 1 hour, that's minus credits, so probably like 50 plus minutes. You have this whole build up and then final battle and all this in that short span of time.
So small.
What? Like,
Excuse me.
yeah, this.
David,
Yeah.
didn't you want to talk about the worms?
Yeah, let's talk about the
I
worms.
did. Sorry, I did. They caught me off guard. Yeah, I could totally talk about the worms.
Let's talk about the worms now.
The sandworms are iconic of Dune, so I think they deserve some.
Before you
Worms
explain
are
it,
amazing.
the worms look cool.
Every single scene with worms in this movie are cool.
David likes worms.
He has them.
I have worms. Yes.
Again?
Hey, look, I keep taking these pills, but apparently they're for dogs.
Yeah, he's got 2 of them, by the way.
So, as far as worms go, I mean, if we're gonna go into this,
Aside from
going
the fact
into
that I
this.
have them.
I mean, we talked about the original scene, which is the spice farming that they were doing, where they were arriving on Arrakis to check on that spice, and then the copters weren't working, so they had to abandon 25, 26 people from that spicing area onto their copter. Thopter. It's a copter, but
No, it's a
built.
thopter.
No, it's not.
It's basically built like a dragonfly. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, that's a thopter.
Yeah, it's an ornithopter.
Whatever. They had wings. So, in that scene, in this original movie, you have the people looking out the windows of the thopter, and you see a worm coming out of the sand and eating the spice harvester.
And explodes.
And it explodes. How do you guys feel about the effects of this?
Oh, I love it.
It's
I
great.
think that's awesome.
What I really like about it is that even though it's there and you can somewhat see it, that there's a lot left to imagination. I mean, they show more later on, but it's kind of just like you see a little bit of something covered in sand gripping this big vehicle and pulling it under, and that's cool.
It is. AJ, what do you think?
So again, here's a lead up issue, like build the tension, build the mystique of
Agreed.
I hear these sandworms. How big are they? Are they really this big? Are they like, can they actually eat this? Like yada yada yada. And then you see as they travel, just the kind of like dust that they spew because they travel underground, the ridges. they call it worm sign, and it's all about spotting, like they're inevitable for these mining excursions. And here it's just like, oh, worm attack, there it is. I mean, it was cool, like it was awesome to watch, but like if you built it up more, like the mystique of them, and then finally the exposure of it, that would make it land a lot more heavily.
Yeah, the tricky part about this one is that we watched this again after watching the new one, and the new one kind of
draw it
points
out.
out the flaws of the old one.
Well, they don't. They point it out in the sense that they do what the old one should have done.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, because the new one, in my opinion, does it so perfectly.
They dwell on it in the perfect amount of time.
It points out, like, oh yeah, they should have done this in the old one. But when you kind of separate it from the new one, you can also still admire it for what it is.
I think
and
that-
realize it's not necessarily bad. It's just that it could have been better.
needed
I
more
think
time.
I think the difference between the two movies, which like just for a moment, is that the new Dune kind of relies on the fact that those that are watching it have either read the book or know the material. I think if you approach it from the standpoint that you've never seen or read anything about Dune before, you're going to be lost. But you can still enjoy the visuals. Like that is definitely something you can enjoy. If you sit down and watch it several times, maybe you can pick up on what's going on. But it's kind of like Denis Villeneuve established that, okay, we're beyond that point. But this movie here, David Lynch's film, it's like he's trying to explain to an audience that hasn't seen or read anything about Dune before what is happening.
I have a theory.
Yeah.
Can I say it real quick?
Sure.
Go ahead.
So we've all seen the Denis Villeneuve movie, correct?
Right.
Yes. And we've already established spoilers. Mm-hmm. Why is he taking that away from me? Am I drunk?
No, I was goofing.
I think he's
evil.
He's messing with you.
It's evil.
It's evil.
Sorry, I just
Noah
took
stole
Reese's
his beer.
away.
You took my beer. I think Denis Villeneuve's version is so successful because he learned from David Lynch.
Yeah.
If you and David and I observed this when we were discussing our experience watching this movie, there is a clear drop off. Like you watch the Denis Villeneuve, it's obviously a part 1 of 2.
Right.
David Lynch's version is successful until the point where the first
Lynch
part
movie
1
drops
ends
off. Yeah.
Yeah.
in Denis Villeneuve's movie. Like that's where I would say like David Lynch has a good movie on his hands.
Yeah.
And then there's a cutoff, and then it just starts really losing it.
Imagine a line just like
Yeah.
dropping on a scale. It's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
there it goes.
I think Denis Villeneuve was like, okay, this is what works about this David Lynch movie. And then he started losing it. Maybe that's where I split these movies up.
Yeah.
You know, where it's...
Maybe that's where the cutoff point is.
It was probably definitely.
There
it
are-
was definitely one of those moments in which he probably saw the old one and was like,
No, he definitely saw it.
yeah.
Yeah, he did learn from
and
that.
it just, he realized that latter half, man, that can use some
It's
work.
actually not even the latter half. It's 45 minutes. Which
Yeah,
is
no, I
weird.
know.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that
is
was
the latter half.
I was my watching of this old Dune, rewatching of it. I was more than halfway in when I realized, well, how are they gonna fit all of this?
Yeah, exactly.
I was really perplexed about this, and you told me like, well, they make it work, and I was like, okay, I know
was
what
wrong.
happens, but
I was wrong. See,
I know what happens.
What were
but-
you saying?
There are clear distinctions also in the novel, like they're literally titled, book 1, 2, kind of like Lord
Yeah.
of the Rings are. Like there's sub books within the overall novel, so there are clear
Right.
cutoff points too that can be followed, and which are followed. So, but I'm not saying you didn't take from this experience as well. Well, he would be dumb not to.
Yeah. So yeah, there's so many things though that are just like put on the fast track. Most
One
specifically,
example-
I think.
Go ahead. I've
yeah.
got one
Most
after you.
specifically, I think the or the sister. to
Yeah,
Paul
exactly.
Atreides,
Yes.
who just comes out of nowhere, and now she's like this significant player who kills Baron
Yeah.
Harkonnen. Like what?
So
Yeah.
the whole transformation of Jessica. This is a disservice to Jessica's character because she was so vitally important in the first part and in Paul's life and their survival. Like, she is a counterweight to Paul's newfound power because she's got this own power, and her transformation and assuming the role of Reverend Mother for the Fremen. That transformation experience in the book is like crazy. It's crazy. I mean, it's very long descriptions. Like it goes into her consciousness and her receiving the memories of, the old Reverend Mother, which was generational memory passed down to her. So that's how she gets all this knowledge, and also her ability that literally breaks down the poison of the water of life, and her ability or power to literally reconfigure that chemical molecule so that it is safe to drink and transmutes it into what it is. And also her awareness of Aaliyah and her consciousness and her terror of, sharing that experience with that being. And then what Aaliyah becomes and that kind of whole aspect in her role within the Fremen society. Like you said, all that is just like, oh, she drinks water, baby's born. Okay, now they're done. There's
I know, right?
We'll use Aaliyah as a weapon at the end, and that's it.
Yeah. Also, there's no build up to Paul deciding to drink the pure water of life or whatever.
He's just
like,
it's
just like, oh, this is the next thing I need to do.
In the books, actually, this is one thing I noticed. In the books, his mother is poisoned or something.
Yeah.
And they try to kill her somehow.
Yeah. So Gurney, he meets Gurney again, who is still convinced because of all the intrigue from the beginning of who the traitor was, which we didn't get in this movie. Gurney still is convinced that Jessica was the traitor, and so his sworn loyalty to Duke Leto is a vowed revenge against Jessica. And so once he meets Jessica again, like, he's trying to kill her.
Yeah,
and Paul couldn't foresee that. He in all his visions, he didn't foresee that. So he saw that as a limitation, so that he needed to take this next step.
Yeah, exactly. Like, something as crucial as that to him, he couldn't see. So he decided, all right, I have to take the next step.
Instead of just waking up
and in this one, he was like,
I'm thirsty.
We got to do it.
Yeah, it's like that night, he just woke up from a bad dream. He's like, I gotta take it.
This is one of the few times where I subscribe to what Noah says. I'm like, break it up. 2 movies, 3 movies.
I think there are a number of times in which you can subscribe to what I say about.
I know, but this is especially
also,
this
like,
though.
Paul in the book, he does it in secret because it's such a huge deal. Like, again, no male has ever survived that experience.
Right.
Yeah.
And, him daring, like, it's really testing the theory, is he the Kwisatz Haderach?
Yeah.
And he just goes and does it in the secret, and then he ends up in a coma, and everybody's scrambling to figure out what's going on. And here it's just like, let me drink it. Okay, well, I'll pour it. Okay.
Montage.
Yeah. And then also, again, in the book, like, there's the question is, because of Aaliyah's experience, is she also a Kwisatz Haderach?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, she's a girl, I think.
But in the sense of her abilities to have that ultimate prescience of bending space, time, and bringing past and future together.
She's supposed to also be a Reverend Mother.
In this movie, she comes across more to me as a Renesmee figure from Twilight. Where it's just kind of like this weird thrown in phenomenon that isn't even really explained that well, just because it's fascinating. I hate it.
But she just goes and makes the Baron float around and spin in circles. Ha ha ha.
Yeah. That's the other thing. So the fact that you don't build up her character at all gives you no satisfaction with the villain deaths. Because while Paul does kill Fade, Fade has still just been this flamboyant, like, I'm a pop star outside of this character, where he, like, the face-off is more of a dance-off than in actual, like, battle.
It's kind of like how in Game of Thrones, I know people will disagree with me, but it's kind of how Arya gets the killing blow after everything's all lost on
The Night King.
The Night King, which I
Right.
think was misplaced. As cool as she is,
Yeah.
she should have killed Cersei or someone as
Before-
her pinnacle.
Right.
And it should have been Jon Snow to get the
Okay.
land.
Yeah,
Before
that
you
makes
even
sense.
go into Fade, though,
Yeah.
the Baron's death
Yeah.
is the ultimate insult because they do so much work setting up this guy as like the disgusting, evil, like
Yeah.
this is the final face off. This is like Darth Sidious. This is like the guy
It's
you
supposed to be.
want to kill.
Right.
And then what happens is the girl uses her little gum jabbar finger thing, does whatever to him,
Slices
and-
his face, pulls
yeah,
his cords.
But it's what is sad is
Yanks
yeah,
his
he goes
chain.
flying off and then into the worm's mouth, and what you
Team
get.
Rocket blasts off
Yeah,
again.
that was what that was. But what you
exactly
get,
what
the
that was.
resolution of that is Paul Atreides and all his boys kind of like see it and they like smile.
I
And then
know.
that's it. I'm like,
Yep.
okay, come on. Like the music is triumphant and everything, but all you just see is him like twirling into the mouth of the worm, and then they're like,
you
that's
would
nice.
you would
He's dead.
think
Team
with all
Rocket
the
blasting off
attention
again.
that David Lynch puts into like just how disgusting this character is,
Yeah.
you would want the final kill to be from Paul.
Yeah.
Like just you need
But
that.
no, it's Fade for some
No.
reason.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. I
Not
guess.
here's how they
Well-
could have fixed it and still had her do it. They could have had a scene in which, she like pulled his plugs and then he started
Mm-hmm.
flying off. He lands in the sand. Now there's like the sand starts changing under him, and then
Yeah.
he sees like the worm coming in, and then
yeah.
Paul is on top of it,
He's like, yeah, bitch.
and then it just slowly like descends on him and
so you were
swallows him up.
you were about to say something, AJ, about
Yeah,
Fade's
I'm just-
character, I'm guessing.
Well, Fade did have a significant role as a rival for Paul,
Right.
because he's supposed to be the foil, especially since he is supposed to be like also in part of the line for the original plan of who the Kwisatz Haderach is.
Right.
So
The Bene Jesuits were
Jesuit.
yeah,
Jesuits.
but
he was
yeah,
a part
I
of
mean the
their
Baron,
programming.
like he might as well have been like flying by flatulence into the like distance for all it was worth.
It's really true.
But in the end, I mean, it did have a little bit of uptick. I mean, the whole
I agree.
thunder and
I
the
agree.
storm
Yes.
was
Mm-hmm.
satisfying.
Yes,
That was great.
And I actually, despite what y'all say, I like the Fade fight.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
like how
I did too.
yeah, I like when he gets killed, and then as an extra insult to injury, Paul is like uses his voice, and it just cracks the floor, and then his chest open, and I'm like, oh, that's cool.
I just think
what
it
would
could
have
have been
helped-
so much better because Fade's character is pretty much nothing to me. Like
Yeah.
the only things he's ever done
He
was
smiled and cackled.
walk out of the steam with just kind of like a banana hammock on or something.
exactly.
And then just smile at the things
Hey,
that
well, he's
the
said
Baron-
a
Just
couple-
watched Aquaman, okay?
He
Well-
said a couple things about wanting to, like, all I want to do is kill this Atreides.
So, in
the book-
like he's
I
said
will
things
kill
like-
him.
yeah.
He
It's
is
like-
being
He said it 5
groomed.
times.
Like the Baron puts Raban in charge of
Yeah.
Arrakis to basically squeeze it, as he says, but also to do a bad job so that he can ultimately supplant Raban with his true heir, Fade, who does have more cunning and guile.
Yeah.
And he has this scene where he's in a kind of a gladiator pit which has all this treachery involved and this kind of really cool fight scene and stuff like. If we had something like that established Fade's character instead of
Yeah.
the stupid glamour shots, and then we have this fight with Paul and Fade, that would have been better.
Yeah. Because this whole time, I've been built up as a viewer of this film to see Baron Harkonnen as the main villain. And the other two, Sting and the Dionysus or whatever character, as merely his cronies. So, but instead, at the end, I'm given the Baron's death is taken by Aaliyah, who's not even really a big character in this film.
She shouldn't be connected to
And then
him.
Fade is killed off by Paul. And Fade isn't, in my opinion, that much of a threat anyway, because I don't get any evidence of that. I'm kind of left wanting.
Yeah.
You know, like, as cool as the deaths are, I just don't feel the satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Final thoughts, everybody?
Yeah, so it rains for the first time on Arrakis. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I think this, and I don't just have problems from like them cutting out things in this final act. I also have problems with the visual effects and everything. Like it just looks sloppy. There's so much like, I don't know, green screen that's super obvious, and like the coloring of things does not match with the backgrounds. So there's so many things that just don't work about this finale to me. Yeah, that's.
I would say I'm not really bothered by, like, I'd say most of things for me work to an extent. The only issue is just the pacing. I just think the pacing is off for the latter half.
Well, okay, so save that for your review.
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up here and get to our reviews.
Yeah.
We've talked a long time about this movie. So yeah, we'll take a quick break, and on the other end we'll get to our reviews, talk some box office, get into what critics thought, and close out with a little bit of franchise talk. So we'll see y'all then.
Cool.
Bye.
Bye.
Welcome back. Let's talk Dune. David, you've got our scores there in a bowl. Why don't you pull them at random there?
Always do. First up, if I can open up paper.
It's tough.
It's
I know.
me.
Yep. Let's hear it.
I don't know where I'm going to fall on this scale. This is one of the hardest
Before you
movies.
reveal, I have a prediction that this is the one that's most likely for people to like shift their scores on. So
Okay, yeah.
I'll
But
just say, go
that's
ahead.
what sucks about being the first one.
Yeah.
Because I
Just
want to
go
hear
ahead.
other people's opinions.
We'll give you a chance to change if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. Look, I don't know if I'm going to shift that much. I am giving it a score that I think might be on the higher end.
Well, then
Okay.
tell me.
Go ahead.
I'm going to start off with a 6.5.
Okay.
You are not on the higher end.
Okay, good
I will
to know.
say that as well. No, you're not.
Well, after talking with you, Reese, I had a feeling you might be above me. But the fact is, this is not a bad movie, in my opinion. I was actually surprised by how good it was. Because of that one time I saw a portion of the movie, I was like, this is going to be a crappy movie. And I did not look forward to watching this. And it started, and I was like trying to make sure I was in the best environment, headspace, and food. I was trying to get in the right zone. And I was like, okay, this is actually not terrible. I'm enjoying this. Mm-hmm. The first 30 minutes, I was invested. In the start of this movie, the most informational dump, the biggest sort of like exposition drop
Hold your
you've
hand.
ever seen in a movie. Mm-hmm. And normally I'm not a big exposition drop kind of guy. And it worked for this because there's so much crap in this movie to understand. And I liked it. And I was like, okay, I don't feel like an idiot now. I
Yep.
can keep up with this movie. It kind of like helped me level the playing field with people who've read the book. And I was like, yep, this is where we're starting. And because I watched the new movie, it allowed me to understand the names and plot.
Yeah, that's something I noticed. Both movies kind of assist each other in helping the audience understand what's happening.
And I think I'm the perfect example of that.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know what to expect from this. I thought it was going to be overwhelming. I thought it was going to be dry. I knew Kyle MacLachlan was the lead.
Dry
and
as a
I
desert
loved him.
dry.
Oh, yeah. And there's no water to be had until the end of the movie. And Kyle MacLachlan is surprisingly good. I thought it was going to be worse. I liked him. But we've all talked about the main issue here. And for me, it especially is a thing. It's a second half issue. The first hour and a half of this movie is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
This might make 7 or an 8 on a scale in the first half. There are issues. It's 1984. The CG, which is non-existent, the practical effects are, it's hit or miss.
Well,
But
I think the sandworms really got a way of worming at you.
The sandworms, the
They
practical
wormed their way
sandworms.
into your heart.
How
Like, what did you like
they
about
do
that?
those worms, by the way?
Yeah, how'd they
How
do
did
the
they
worms?
do those?
I am so perplexed.
I don't think you are. But if anyone wants to know, the
Yes.
sandworms. It's all practical. There's no CG.
I
as
could
we
tell.
all could guess. Anybody? Any guesses of what they did?
Someone's
They made
fingers.
animatronics.
They put
Gloves.
putty on their fingers and then stuck them through.
It
little-
almost feels like you guys are
Sand
mocking
puppets.
me. I know you
They're
guys were
finger
setting me up.
puppets.
They actually zoomed in really, really close to tube worms.
I hate you all. Any real guesses?
Sock puppets.
Oh, you suck. Miniatures, guys. Miniatures.
Oh.
They use miniatures. And
Do you say wait?
Is that a wiener joke?
Do you say miniatures?
Self-burn.
yeah,
You don't say miniatures?
I say miniatures.
there's an A
Alright.
there.
All right, go ahead.
How
just
did
go
the
ahead.
worms work?
Well, no. The funny thing is, though, the worms themselves aren't super complicated. They're just miniatures. But what they're coming out of is sand, which is a very complex material to try to replicate in a miniature scale. Because if you have a worm that is supposed to be like a thousand.
Your correction was worse than your first.
It was
A thousand.
1,000 to 1 scale. Then when you're doing a miniature, it'll probably be like 100 to 1, which means you have to really work hard to get that sand to match that scale.
Okay.
And so what they did was they actually had to use miniature sand. I'm not even kidding.
Did they like chop it up?
No, hold on. Where's my phone? Where is my notes? I wasn't expecting
Where's
it.
my
I wasn't
super
expecting to go
Super
into this.
suit?
Yeah, we
Why
both
do
thought
you
the
need
same
it?
thing.
All right. So the fact is, they had micro glass balloons for the sand, which
Dang.
is such a microscopic version of sand that they had to wear suits, respirators to make sure that they didn't inhale it because it would be stuck in their lungs forever and cut it up.
That's no good.
Yeah. So when they did this, they had to shoot it in slow mo.
They wouldn't have any visions either.
They had to shoot it in slow mo and with this micro sand to match the scale, which I didn't even know was a thing. I was
It's
super
really
impressed.
cool,
So the
actually.
sand was doing, I think, more work than the worms themselves because you can make a miniature worm, but when it's coming out of it, it has to match. So there you go.
David knows about that.
Interesting.
Yeah. Coming
Leave
out.
me alone. But yeah, 6.5 seems relatively fair considering the fact that the acting was really good. The sets were 7 out of 10.
What?
I think the sets were stupendous.
Sorry, I'll let
Yeah.
you say your piece.
I don't know. I thought they were okay. I thought they were good most of the time.
All right, continue. Just finish.
The fact is they did a lot of good, they did a lot of bad, and it equaled out positive more than negative. So 6.5 was my gut reaction to this movie, and I'm sticking with it until
You
maybe...
said 6.5, I thought.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's what I just said
He
again.
said he's
No, he was
sticking
thinking
with
of 7, which is kind of a typical score for you.
Oh, yeah. He's comparing this against
Alright.
the Yetis and
He was,
the
he
football.
was, yeah. He was wishing
See-
a Yeti would come out of the sand
See, the
instead.
thing about sand particles is they're not the same as snow particles,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
which are better. And especially when football is involved.
Interesting.
Also, David scored The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor 7 out of 10. Moving
Because
on.
Brendan Fraser's in that movie, I might watch it over this. Maybe.
Yeah, but Rachel Weisz is not. So
She is not. You're right. Maria Bella.
Yep.
So, next up, Noah with an 8?
I actually,
Whoa, baby.
I actually really liked the movie.
All right.
I don't know. There are a lot of like nitpicks that you can have, but only because you know the source material and
I didn't know the source material.
okay, but you had also watched Dune, the newer one before this.
I did.
Yeah. So having watched that one as well as knowing the source material, it's hard to give this a fair shake. And I'm probably going to take this down a notch, but this movie I think does an amazing job with the set and a lot of the practical effects. There are some that don't quite pan out, but the immersion is there. I think the casting is really good. I mean, I would have done a little differently with Paul, but I think he still does an amazing job, regardless. And as far as story points go, they got them. I mean, all the things that happen. It's just the main issue with it is that they're crammed too much and perhaps tweaked.
That's a storytelling issue.
Yeah. But I just think the main issue with it is the cramming into the latter half of the movie of just so many different huge events that would be more momentous if they were spread out and given the right timing. That said, I'm gonna take it down a notch, bring it down to a 7. I was already debating between the two.
7.
Yeah, I was already debating between the two numbers, and I was like, well, ultimately, I had a good time watching it.
7.5 is allowed.
Yeah, I know. I'm taking it down a whole point on purpose.
Wow.
But I think there's a lot of good in this movie, and there is also a lot of bad.
We've talked about that. That's for sure.
That's kind of that. There you go. That's my review.
I would say it's longer than your normal review, so I like it.
His normal review, I liked it.
I didn't like it.
Hey, considering he read the book,
I did. Read the
I
book.
hope he has a good,
Yeah.
perspective on this.
Yeah.
What would you rate the book?
Oh gosh, that's it. It's a great book.
Okay.
That's
It's only
up
the
in
best-selling sci-fi novel of all time.
It's like that book it's in the 10 tier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
All right. Next up is Reese with a 7.
I didn't put a question mark on it.
I did.
That was
I don't
an
know why. I
emphatic
don't know why
7.
I put a 7. It was a 7.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And this was one of those things where I wanted to go lower, but I kind of asked myself, I was like, do I like this movie? Am I glad it exists? And the ultimate answer to that question was, yeah, I don't regret my experience watching this. Yes, it's very flawed. But when I ask myself, like, am I glad I watched this? Am I glad it exists? Yes, I like it. It has very many flaws, as we've already noted. I think the third act, Act 1 and 2 are good. Act 3 is just so rushed and so slapdash. And slapdash is maybe the wrong word. I think it's more just like so much is cut out from it that it just like
Non-existent.
really, yeah, it just doesn't hit like the rest of the movie does. But I think that this is an admirable effort. I think David Lynch, I feel bad for him because I know his vision of this movie isn't fully on display. But the first 2/3 of this movie really go a long way in establishing this world. Really kind of, there's exposition, but I think it's effective exposition, and it does a good job of, helping you or like hand-holding you into understanding what's happening, which is impressive considering how dense this universe is. And there are so few movies that have me just reacting in such a visceral way to things happening on screen, especially with their Harkonnens and all that. There's so many moments that are kind of like burned into my brain from this movie that I can't not acknowledge it, at least making me feel something. So when a movie makes me feel something, I'm like, it's doing something right. I also like, and this is what's more impressive is I am comparing this to Denis Villeneuve's movie. I think there are certain things that this movie actually does better. And I do like Villeneuve's movie much better than this, but there's certain things that I like more about this one. I like how tactile it is. I like how grotesque it can be at times, which is something that the other movie is lacking, because the other movie tries to be so immaculately beautiful in every scene. This movie is willing to just be disgusting.
This movie is
at
weirder,
times.
it's
Like,
grosser,
it's weirder,
it's
like,
creepier.
it is, yeah, it's not afraid to go
disturbing.
there. Yeah, and I like Kyle MacLachlan. I actually like Kyle MacLachlan better. Sorry, but what happened there? I like Kyle MacLachlan better than I like Timothée Chalamet, and I know that's a controversial statement.
Not just controversial, 100% wrong.
No, the thing is, I think, and
I know a lot of people that agree with you.
Yeah, and I think even though it doesn't show the transition from boy to man, I think I like the boy version and the man version of Kyle MacLachlan better than I like whatever they're doing with Timothée Chalamet, who seems like a boy throughout the whole movie. And maybe that's the intention.
Haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, I know. I just admire what this actor's doing. I like it.
It's supposed to be 15.
You're making my nostrils flare, Reese.
Sorry.
Kyle MacLachlan is the captain from How I Met Your Mother,
sorry.
and that's it.
Okay, look, I love people,
Is this your
but
review?
anyone who thinks Kyle MacLachlan is more Paul Atreides have not read the books.
I'm not
excuse
saying
me.
that's the.
You're wrong. No.
And also, Noah, I am judging this as a movie not based on the books. I'm judging it just
Dude.
as what it is. Okay.
Okay.
This is what it's telling me. I have not read the books.
That was a jerk reaction. I'll be okay.
Yeah,
now.
I like Kyle MacLachlan in this role. Apparently, AJ does too.
I like him as well. I actually really like him.
I like him more than Timothée Chalamet.
It's just okay.
I know.
You're just being mean at this point, Reese.
Also, love the music. I think it's exceptional. I agree with AJ. They do overuse it, but I don't know. There's something special about this Dune. It's a flawed piece of art, but it is still intriguing to me, and it gives me just enough to give it a passing grade. So I will stick with my 7.
Cool.
All right. Next, I think we should tone it down a bit. What do you guys think? Next up, AJ with a 4.
Ooh.
Oh yeah.
Here comes
That's
Debbie
low.
Downer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
it's fair.
yeah. So this movie is polarizing, and I, to the best of my ability, have come at this as both a book reader and a non-book reader in watching this movie, and I feel like I'm giving it a fair shake. So
Yep.
I know what I'm getting into with a David Lynch movie. I know 80s sci-fi has kind of this weird element to this thing, and so I'm okay with that. And I was on board with this movie, even, it's deviations from source material. I know book adaptations have to change or omit things and all that stuff. I understand all of that. The poison pill, or the poison tooth, rather, really, that just shot this out of the sky was Baron Harkonnen. I cannot stomach the goofy clown depiction of Baron Harkonnen. Like, it is just so far off from what... And in my book, I mean, I've said this several times in many episodes, good villains are very important to me in order to establish, bounce off of the protagonist, set tone, all this stuff. This Baron Harkonnen is a buffoon. Like, it just, it's not even grotesque in a good grotesque way. It's dumb. It's terrible. And I feel strongly about that. So, like, once he started flying around screen, like I said, with the fizzy lifting drink from Willy Wonka, and all the boils and the spitting and it was so cartoonish and comical, and it was not what Baron Harkonnen needed to be. It completely missed the mark. Wasn't even the same planet, in my opinion. That's the first issue. Second issue, and I said this before too, I mean, especially the second half, but the whole movie feels like one super long, drawn-out, extended montage. No connected tissue between scene to scene to scene. Development, progression, anything. It's just, this happens, this happens, this happens. Fanfare, scene, bravado, but still the emotion is empty. And they left something out of the book that was... And this book we were talking about, is this book a good book that David asked and stuff? There's a part where this book, and even when I still reread it, but the first time I read this book, it's one of the most memorable scenes of reading any literature that I can remember, is the part I got to, and this is spoiler alerts for anyone who wants to read the book, or I don't know if they're going to put this in the new movie, but spoiler alerts, skip forward 30 seconds if you don't want spoilers. Are you guys okay with me spoilers? Go
for it.
All right. So there's a part in the book towards the end where Muad'Dib, Paul has become ingrained with the Fremen society, and the whole affair with Cheney and stuff, and they have a son, and in the part of the war and stuff like that, where he's waging the jihad against the rebellion against the Harkonnens. The Harkonnens, Raban specifically, they raid the Sietch Tabor, where baby Leto is named after Paul's father, and the baby is killed. Raban crushes him. I had to put the book down for an hour. I felt like it just hit me so hard emotionally. And for a story to like impact you that emotionally and then just see a clown floating around on screen is a slap in the face. So there's that
big difference
aspect
between people who have read the book and people who
yeah,
haven't.
and so there is that aspect of having read the books and invested in the story and stuff. But even from a non-book reader's perspective, that did not click for me. And just having the narrative structure of it just non-continuous and thematically eradicating any kind of message that like there's no excuse, even studio meddling or edit aside, that excuses any kind of like just erasure of theme. Of the integration of the Fremen culture and the people are completely swept by the wayside in this story, in this movie, that are so prominent. I mean, the book is called Dune. It is about that planet, and these people are the natives of this planet. They are what makes this planet, the lifeblood, the water. I mean, we didn't even see the importance of water, and more important than blood in this movie, really. And their society, and Paul learning that society and also teaching that society, becoming that messianic figure, and him struggling with the prophetic vision is just automatically granted magically to him.
Yeah.
And that thematic message of, like the comparison of the whole ecological stewardship, and the savior of cultures, and is that leader someone who you trust, whether it's be the emperor, whether it be Paul Muad'Dib, the Kwisatz Haderach. I mean, Frank Herbert had a quote, "The difference between a hero and an anti-hero is where you stop the story." And this movie didn't even start that story, unfortunately. So that's why I don't like this movie. I get that it's a sci-fi-ish movie, but the real heart of the story, the emotions, the theme, didn't even make it to the picture. We just got a clown.
I think you did a good job of hiding your vitriol for this movie. Like, yeah, you voiced your criticisms, but I didn't expect a criticism this harsh.
And I get it. Like I said, I've seen David Lynch movies. I expect that kind of artistic take on things. I've seen kitschy shot sci-fi. I can take all that. But just to like remove the guts, the heart of the movie, and slap it with this clownish face paint was just I can't do it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right, 4.
All right, next
Final
up,
review.
what are we gonna get? Irina with a 7.5.
Right.
Yeah, so I haven't read the whole book, but it's still on my list to read, and I feel like that might affect the score. But I would be lying if I said that my history with this movie and growing up with it didn't affect that scoring. I think this movie, in a weird way, even though it wasn't my favorite growing up, was kind of formative as far as the types of films I like to watch. I'm very interested in engaging in a world from someone's mind that is unusual and not like anything I've seen before, and this definitely fit that bill. So I love basically the setup and the world building that's involved with this, as well as the music kind of just really immerses you. As a kid, I was very disturbed, obviously, by a lot of the Harkonnen aspects of it. Overall, I've always enjoyed Kyle MacLachlan too. He just kind of has this very pleasant, engaging
He does.
personality.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if it was necessarily his portrayal of Muad'Dib or Paul, but it was also just kind of him as an actor. So I think that adds to a lot of my positive scoring for this movie. The first section of it is, like we've all said, actually pretty good. Like it's not bad at all, and it's telling a story. There's sort of an awkwardness at first about the information dump, but it feels necessary, and it is at least some kind of format that they have, which is completely dropped for the second half, where you're having these drug trips and all sorts of weird assumptions about what exactly is happening. You kind of have to form that for yourself, and for some reason there's no one explaining to you why this, as David has explained, ballsack of a character is even involved. The one with the weird mouth.
Yep.
And it's never really established what that is. And I find myself just kind of getting lost in the second half, as well as all of the important moments just being rushed by like little snapshots of what is leading up to this final moment, which should have more weight to it than it actually does. And that's a lot of the reason this isn't a perfect film. I think I'm going to move it down to a 7, though. And most of these points go to the fact that you can tell there's so much work put on detail in this movie, as well as attention to how you're setting up this film. Like, I can see that there's actual genuine aspects of it where they're trying to do right by the work, but David Lynch is also trying to include his own perspective and his own unique style of directing and writing. It's just so sad that you have to cut so much out of the story. And it's very vital to the story. If I were to cut anything...
It's a very flawed work.
If I were to cut anything, I would... As a director, I feel like I would have to cut from the beginning. You know, like all that exposition talking about where Paul is coming from. Because honestly, the middle part is where a lot of the work is done to lead up to this, you know, these explosive moments where he's, you know, taming a worm, taking the water of life, like that's just kind of blown over, and you don't even know what the water of life is or the significance of it.
Yeah.
It just happens, and then you go through this kind of acid trip where things just start working out for him, I guess. But I'll leave it at a 7 because I think I still feel nostalgic for this film. I like a lot of the actors involved, and I think there was something better that was supposed to come out from this, but unfortunately we just did not get that.
Can I partner with you? I think it has ambition.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, and I give it points for that. Like, there's ambition here. Like, tackling Dune and trying to make it all fit into one movie is ambitious. But yeah, it was flawed. But continue, sorry.
Oh no, that was basically the end of my little monologue, because everyone's kind of said everything I've felt already, and I'm pretty sure I've given a lot of my thoughts throughout the course of talking about this film, so I won't keep talking too long.
All right. AJ, you want to crunch those numbers for us?
Yeah, boy, I really rained on that planet.
All right. You made it rain on Arrakis.
I mean, I would hope so. You're the one that's actually read the books, so it makes sense.
Yeah, and I didn't give it merit for like what you said, the production value and the attempt. It is a huge, undertaking, especially squeezing it in one movie. So
yeah.
All right, so we have a group average of 6.3.
So that's like around one of those Pirates movies, I feel like.
Yeah, so we've got a 6.3 for a few different movies. We have 28 Weeks Later, The Neverending Story, Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, Clash of the Titans, 1981, and now Dune.
That's
Okay.
fair.
I'm not mad about that. Yeah.
And that,
So-
I would think that most of those are similar in level for me.
This will tickle some of you guys. So Sinbad, Legend of the Seven Seas at a 6.4,
Okay.
which I know you didn't like. Van Helsing at a 6.5. And then below that, we had Chronicles of Narnia, Voyage of the Dawn Treader at 6.2, as well as Dragonheart at 6.2.
Interesting.
I think that's fair company. If I'm being honest, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm
It's
going
a
to be
weird- I
think
dishonest
that-
and say I don't think that's fair.
I mean,
think
part
it
of
should
my
be higher?
review
No, I
is
said I'm going to be dishonest.
part of what goes
truth
into my
sayer, I don't
review
believe you.
is a movie that has a lasting impact. Like this one caused me to think and have emotion about it, and it still is a mood that sticks with me. Like after watching this rendition of Dune, you still feel the effect of it afterwards.
that's
Whereas
fair.
there are so many movies I've seen where it's not good or bad, it just doesn't stick with me, and I find that worse.
I
I
invite
agree.
everyone to watch the sci-fi miniseries, both
Yeah.
the one of the first novel and then the combined second and third novel miniseries.
check
They're
it
very
out.
good.
I would like to watch that actually.
All right, let's
Which
move
has,
on to
it
critics.
has its own flaws, but it's also a good.
Right.
All right, moving on to critics. On Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has a 44% with an audience score of 65%. So fresh.
Interesting.
65, almost exactly what I gave it.
Yep. On Metacritic, the movie has a 41 from critics and a 6.2 from audiences.
Congratulations, David. You're
yep,
generic.
I'm on it.
Yep. So again, a mixed review versus slightly, very minimally positive from audiences. And on IMDb, a strictly audience-based score, we have 6.4 out of 10.
That's
I'm feeling validated.
Ours was 6.3, wasn't it?
So this movie is just straight up mixed reviews down the middle.
Slightly positive.
It falls in line with what we've heard. This movie is polarizing. Either people hate it or they like it. And there's people in the middle as well. So it's just all across the board for Dune. Box office, y'all ready for it?
I suppose.
Movie released wide on December 14th in 1984. Also playing at the time were Beverly Hills Cop, City Heat, 2010, The Year We Make Contact, something that might come up later, and The Cotton Club.
I don't know any of those other than Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah. And since this movie is 1984, I did do a inflation adjuster for the budget.
Cool.
And for our box office game. So this movie was originally made for $40 million, which translates to 106 million in today's dollars. So it's a big budget movie. What do y'all think this movie did back in the day, 1984, worldwide? AJ, it's your miniseries. I'm going to throw it over to you first.
I know it was a box office bomb. I guess that helps everybody else out here. I'm gonna say 100.
100, and that's is that inflated?
Yeah.
All right, we're doing inflated guesses. Noah.
I'll go a little higher. I'm gonna say 120.
127. All right.
Yeah.
David.
99.
That's evil.
Irina.
98. Just kidding.
Let's do 85.
Irina, you've been winning so many of these.
What? It
I
must be
hate
low. Dang.
Wait, what?
Yeah, and we're going inflated, so yes. If you go back in the day, 84, it's 31 million. But in today's dollars, in today's dollars, it's 83 million. So Irina was very close.
Oh my goodness! Look
Yeah, you
at
said
that.
85 million. You're good at this. Yeah, look at you.
So they lost.
Stop
money.
asking Irina last.
No, the movie
I'm
was
just intuitive, you know.
the movie was not successful. It has, however, gained a cult following, and a lot of people still kind of hold this movie as, hey, not as bad as you think. It's done well sales-wise. There have been multiple releases for the film post-theatrical that are just... it's had some special edition releases, and people keep kind of returning to this movie, so it's not forgotten, you know? But yeah, the initial theatrical release was unsuccessful. It was definitely a bomb. The budget was kind of ballooned over time, and it doesn't sound like a huge budget compared to some of today's movies, but at the time, a $42 million budget was not good.
Yeah.
Not good at all. So yeah, box office bomb. Not great reviews. This movie's not getting a sequel, guys. But there were plans for a sequel.
Plans within plans within plans.
So yeah, David Lynch, the director of this movie, had actually was writing scripts and was intended to, he was planning on doing the sequel, Dune Messiah, I believe it was called. Had written or at least was writing the script for this. And based off of just the critical reaction and box office reaction, that was never going to happen. And he himself was really upset with the whole process of what happened with how his movie was cut down and how we ended up with this final product that just wasn't to anybody's liking particularly, especially based off how his original cut was supposed to be like 3 hours long. So yeah, that never happened. He was actually planned. They were going to have 2 and 3 after this movie. It was Messiah and something else. This was supposed
Children
to
of
be
Dune.
it was supposed to be the adult Star Wars, as I referenced earlier. It was going to be like, you have Star Wars and then you have Dune, that's what the parents go to watch while their kids are watching Star Wars. That did not happen. So yeah. Box office, critics killed this franchise, unfortunately, and here we are with a new Denis Villeneuve Dune Part 1. It took 30 plus years to happen, but here we are. We're back in the Dune franchise.
The directorial Kwisatz Haderach, so to speak.
Yeah. It's funny because this property has always seemed like the indie... Like, oh, we gotta keep making this happen. People keep trying to make Dune happen as a movie. Because it's something
cool.
it is very cool, but it's something that, like, against all odds, people want to make Dune happen. And,
Well,
So fetch.
yeah.
Like I said, it's literally the best-selling sci-fi novel of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a fan base for it. And there's several, I guess, B-level movies of it. You know, you have miniseries and stuff, but yeah.
Yeah. But what's funny, it's the one franchise that is able to, I don't know, it's not glitzy and commercial like the Marvel Cinematic Universe or all the other blockbusters that you see today.
Lord of the Rings.
It's the one that's kind of like meets the indies in the middle, where it's creative and it's like this thing that just studios are willing to pump their money into, even though it doesn't have this mainstream appeal.
Yeah.
And that's what's cool about Dune. And I'm just glad that there is this willingness to make this franchise happen. And I'm just glad that we have that Denis Villeneuve film right now, and that it actually is happening, and the sequel to that is confirmed. So yeah, not a dead franchise. This version, yes, David Lynch's version, definitely dead, not continuing. But yeah, there's hope for this franchise yet.
Well, the
Do
property.
y'all have any final? Huh?
Well, the property more than.
Yeah, the property. It that gets kind of fuzzy though. Like a franchise can still be alive even though it's not following the same like trajectory of the
Fair
original
enough.
movie. I don't know. It's weird. But yeah, that's Dune. Next week, we're talking about 2001, A Space Odyssey. We're dipping back into Kubrick. It hasn't been long You know, we talked about The
Couple
Shining
months
not
ago.
too long ago. Yeah, a couple months ago. We're getting back into Kubrick.
Moving
This is
gradually earthward.
Yeah. Kubrick is someone you never associate with franchises, yet a good handful of his movies have had, like, sequel potential. And here we go. This one actually got a sequel, which is weird. Spoiler alert. But yeah, next week, 2001 A Space Odyssey. Can't wait to dip into this one. Weirdly, a movie that I have never seen.
Oh, really?
Believe it? Yep.
Oh, I'm
Yep.
excited.
Yep. I've never seen this one.
Hey,
Spoiler
Reese,
alert.
let me know when you watch this, because I may or may not have seen this either.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm
Interesting.
excited.
Oh,
I know all
I'm
the
rubbing
cultural
my
references
hands
of it.
together.
I know about it, but I haven't seen the full movie.
Oh, it's going to be fun, guys.
All
right.
right.
All right. Next week, 2001 A Space Odyssey. I've said it 5 million times already, but that's that. Goodbye, guys. We'll see y'all then.
That's all.
Goodbye.
folks.
Father, the sleeper has awakened.